The fever took 3 men in a single night, their screams echoing through the bunkhouse until they couldn't scream anymore. Mercy Holloway stood in the doorway, watching hardened cowboys collapse like children, and knew she had two choices: run before the sickness found her kids, or stay and fight something she might not survive. The ranch foreman was already turning blue. The nearest doctor was 4 days away through mountain passes thick with early snow. And Riker Boone, the man who'd barely spoken 10 words to her since she arrived, just looked at her with eyes that said, "We're all going to die here. This is their story. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels." The wagon lurched through another pothole, and Mercy's daughter whimpered without opening her eyes. Sarah hadn't spoken in 3 weeks. Not since they'd buried her father in frozen ground 200 miles back, dirt so hard they'd needed a pickaxe to break through. "Mama, I'm hungry." Thomas pressed against Mercy's side, his 7-year-old body nothing but sharp angles beneath threadbare clothes. "I know, baby. Soon." The lie tasted like ash. She had 4 dried biscuits left and maybe 2 cups of cornmeal at the bottom of their last sack. Soon meant nothing when you were 3 days past broke and still a week from anywhere that mattered. The freight driver, a weathered man named Chester who'd agreed to take them this far for the last of her husband's tools, cleared his throat. "Ranch is just over that rise, ma'am. Boone's place." Mercy pulled her shawl tighter against wind that cut like broken glass. March in the high country, where spring was still a rumor and winter hadn't bothered leaving yet. She'd sent Riker Boone a letter 6 weeks ago, calling in a debt so old she wasn't sure he'd even remember it. Her father had saved Riker's life during a barn fire in '61, pulled him out of the flames while his own hands blistered and never asked for anything in return. Now Mercy was asking. Begging, really, but she'd stopped caring about pride somewhere around the time she'd started rationing her children's food. The wagon crested the hill, and there it was. Cade Ranch sprawled across the valley floor like something trying to hide from the world. The main house was solid enough, 2 stories of rough-hewn timber with a stone chimney pumping wood smoke into gray sky. But the outbuildings looked mean: a sagging barn, a bunkhouse with gaps in the walls, corrals that needed mending, and beyond it all, mountains that rose up like they wanted to crush everything beneath them. "Not much to look at," Chester said, which might have been the kindest thing he'd said in 3 days. Mercy didn't answer. She was watching a man step out onto the porch. Riker Boone. She recognized him even from a distance, even though 15 years had carved him into someone harder. He'd been 19 when her father saved him, lean and quick with a smile that came easy. The man standing on that porch looked like he'd forgotten how to smile. Tall, broad through the shoulders, dark beard streaked with gray even though he couldn't be more than 34. He stood with his arms crossed, watching them approach with all the warmth of a wolf studying something that might be food or might be trouble. The wagon stopped. Chester climbed down and started unloading their trunk, one pathetic piece of luggage that held everything they owned. Mercy gathered Sarah in her arms, the girl's body limp and unresisting, while Thomas jumped down and immediately stumbled. "Easy, son." Mercy caught his arm, steadied him, felt how much weight he'd lost. Riker came down the porch steps. Up close, he was even more intimidating, 6 foot something of controlled violence wearing work clothes and suspicion. His eyes were dark, unreadable. A scar cut through his left eyebrow and disappeared into his hairline. "Mrs. Holloway." His voice was gravel and smoke. "Mr. Boone, I appreciate you. Your letter said temporary, not even pretending at courtesy." Mercy shifted Sarah's weight, lifted her chin. "That's right. Just until I can figure out where we're going. Temporary means 2 weeks, maybe 3. I understand." He looked at her children with an expression she couldn't read. Thomas tried to stand taller under that gaze, his thin shoulders pulling back. Sarah just buried her face against Mercy's neck. "Girl sick? She doesn't talk anymore, not since—" Mercy's throat closed. "Since we buried her father. Since she watched him die over 6 days while I couldn't do anything but hold his hand. Since everything we had fell apart." Riker's jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. He looked past them to where the sun was dropping toward the mountains, turning the sky colors that didn't belong in nature, purple and gold and blood red. "Storm coming," he said. "Big one. Should hit tomorrow night." He turned back toward the house. Bunkhouse is full. You'll take the room off the kitchen. It's small. Thank you. He stopped, glanced over his shoulder. Don't thank me yet, Mrs. Holloway. This ranch isn't a charity house. You want to stay, you work. That goes for the boy, too, if he's old enough. I'm 8, Thomas lied, adding a year like it mattered. Something might have flickered in Riker's eyes. Might have been amusement, or might have been nothing. Then you're old enough. Breakfast is at 5. Don't be late. He disappeared into the house without another word. Chester handed Mercy their trunk with a grunt. Good luck, ma'am. You're going to need it. The wagon pulled away, leaving them standing in a yard that felt more abandoned than inhabited. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of horses and pine and something else. Distance, maybe. The kind of isolation that could swallow a person whole. Mama? Thomas's voice was small. Is he going to make us leave? Not if I can help it. Mercy kissed Sarah's forehead, tasted salt and fever sweat. Come on, let's see this room. The room off the kitchen wasn't just small. It was a closet with delusions. Maybe 8 feet by 10, with a narrow bed against one wall, a 3-legged table someone had tried to fix with a piece of fence post, and a window so dirty it turned sunlight into vague suggestions. But it had 4 walls and a door that closed, and that was more than they'd had for the past 3 weeks. Mercy laid Sarah on the bed, tucked the thin blanket around her, watched her daughter's eyes track nothing. Thomas stood in the doorway, looking lost. Go wash your hands in the kitchen, Mercy told him, and your face. We're guests here. We're workers, Thomas corrected. Mr. Boone said. Guests who work. Now go. She waited until he left, then let herself sag against the wall. Her back screamed. 3 weeks of wagon seats and ground that was either too hard or too cold, or both. Her hands were cracked and bleeding in places. Her dress was filthy, her hair was a disaster, and she probably smelled like something that had died and been poorly buried. And tomorrow she had to prove she was worth keeping. Through the thin walls, she could hear men talking in the main room. Rough voices, tired voices. Ranch hands coming in from whatever work filled their days. She caught fragments. Boone's lost his mind. Widow with 2 kids. Middle of nowhere with winter coming. Give him a week before she's crying to leave. Mercy's hands curled into fists. A week. They'd give her a week before deciding she'd fail. She'd survived worse than their low expectations. Well, 5 a.m. came early and cold. Mercy woke to darkness absolute, fumbled for matches, got a candle lit. Sarah was still asleep, curled tight like she was trying to disappear. Thomas stirred when Mercy touched his shoulder, sat up rubbing his eyes. It's time, she whispered. The kitchen was bigger than she'd expected, dominated by a cast-iron stove that looked old enough to have opinions. A long table filled the center, scarred wood that had seen decades of meals and knife work. Shelves lined the walls, sparsely stocked. A pump stood in the corner over a deep sink. And sitting at the table, already dressed, already awake, was Riker Boone. You're late, he said. Mercy glanced at the clock on the mantel. 2 minutes past 5. I apologize. Don't apologize. Do better. He stood, reached for his coat. Coffee's on the stove. Eggs and bacon in the cold box. Biscuits, if you know how to make them. Men eat at 5:30. They work hard and they eat a lot. Don't make them wait. How many men? 8 plus me, plus you and the boy makes 11. He paused at the door. Girl gonna eat? I'll try. He nodded once and left. Thomas looked up at Mercy with wide eyes. What do we do? We cook breakfast for 9 hungry cowboys in 25 minutes. Mercy tied her hair back, rolled up her sleeves, tried not to think about how long it had been since she'd cooked for anyone but 3 people. You know how to set a table? Yes, ma'am. Then start setting. Plates, forks, knives, cups. Move. They moved. Mercy had learned to cook from her mother, who'd learned from hers. Generations of women who'd made meals stretch and fed families through lean times. She fell into the rhythm without thinking. Fire stoked hot, bacon in the pan, eggs waiting, flour and lard and buttermilk becoming biscuits under her hands. The smells woke Sarah. The girl appeared in the doorway, silent and staring. Good morning, baby. You hungry? Sarah shook her head but didn't leave. You can help your brother set the table. Sarah didn't move, but her eyes followed Thomas as he worked. Small victories. At 5:28, the door opened and men started filing in. They came in stomping boots and cold air, talking low among themselves, falling silent when they saw Mercy at the stove. 8 cowboys in various states of weathered. Young ones and old ones, a Mexican fellow with kind eyes, a huge man with a red beard, a thin, nervous type who looked like he expected bad news. They took their seats without speaking, watching her like she was something exotic and probably temporary. Riker came in last. "This is Mrs. Holloway. She'll be cooking while she's here. You got complaints? Keep 'em to yourself." "Yes, boss," someone muttered. Mercy started serving. Eggs, bacon, biscuits with butter and jam she'd found in the cold box. She worked fast, efficient, remembering who wanted coffee black and who took it with sugar. The men ate without talking much, shoveling food like it might escape. When she set a plate in front of Riker, he looked up at her. "Biscuits are good." 2 words. But coming from him, they felt like a paragraph. "Thank you." The meal ended fast. Men pushed back from the table, grabbed hats and gloves, headed out into pre-dawn darkness. The Mexican cowboy, she'd heard someone call him Diego, paused at the door. "Breakfast was real good, senora. Best we've had in months." "Thank you. Don't listen to what they say in the bunkhouse. You got a chance here. Don't waste it." Then he was gone, and Mercy was alone with a table full of dirty dishes and 2 silent children. She looked at Thomas. "You know how to wash dishes?" "I can learn." "Good. So can I." Potent. The days fell into a pattern brutal in its simplicity. Wake at 5. Cook breakfast. Clean the kitchen. Tend to Sarah, who still wouldn't speak but at least started eating again. Check the stores, realize they were running low on everything. Make lunch. Clean. Check on the garden behind the house, a patch of dead earth that hadn't seen care in years. Make dinner. Clean. Collapse. Riker barely spoke to her. He'd appear at meals, eat whatever she put in front of him, leave without comment. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Sometimes she'd see him with Thomas, showing the boy how to mend a fence or curry a horse, his voice low and patient in a way that contradicted everything else about him. The ranch hands were harder to figure out. Some ignored her completely. Others were carefully polite. A few made it clear they thought she'd be gone before the first snow. The one who worried her most was Chet, the foreman, a squat man with cold eyes and a voice like breaking rocks. He watched her the way predators watched prey, always calculating, always waiting for weakness. On the 4th day, he cornered her in the kitchen while she was preparing lunch. "You're in my way," he said, standing too close. Mercy didn't step back. "I'm making food. You want to eat, you'll have to wait." "I don't take orders from women." "Then you don't take orders from Mr. Boone, because he told me to cook. You have a problem with that. Take it up with him." Chet's face darkened. "You think you're smart? Think you're going to last here? I think you're standing in my kitchen breathing on my food, and if you don't move, I'm going to accidentally spill hot grease on your boots." For a second she thought he might hit her. His hand even twitched. Then bootsteps sounded on the porch, and Riker walked in, took one look at the situation, and his voice went cold enough to freeze blood. "Chet, outside. Now!" The foreman left without a word, but the look he gave Mercy promised this wasn't finished. Riker stood in the doorway, waiting until Chet was gone. "He bother you again? You tell me. I can handle—" "You tell me." Not a request. This ranch has rules. Men who break them don't stay. He left before she could respond. That night, Mercy heard shouting from the bunkhouse. The next morning, Chet had a black eye and ate his breakfast in poisonous silence. 2 weeks became 3. The first snow came, light and tentative, melting by noon. The men stopped talking about when she'd leave and started asking what was for dinner. Thomas grew stronger on regular meals, started laughing again. Sarah still didn't talk, but she'd sit in the kitchen while Mercy cooked, sometimes arranging vegetables into patterns, sometimes just watching. Mercy found herself noticing things about Riker. The way he always served himself last at meals, how he worked twice as hard as any of his men, the careful distance he kept from her, like he was afraid of something he wouldn't name. One evening she found him on the porch, staring at the mountains while smoke from his cigarette disappeared into twilight. "Storm's coming," he said without looking at her. "Real one this time. Could last days. We'll manage." "You always this stubborn?" "Only when I need to be." She leaned against the porch rail, careful to keep space between them. My father talked about you sometimes. After the fire. Riker's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. That's so. Said you were a good kid. Wild, but good. Said you had potential. Your father saved my life. I was 17 and thought I was invincible. Fell asleep in the barn with a lit cigarette. His voice went distant. Woke up choking on smoke with fire everywhere. Couldn't find the door. He came through the flames like it was nothing, dragged me out. His hands... He took a long drag. Never did thank him proper. He didn't need thanks. That's who he was. And you're like him. I'm nothing like him. I'm terrified every minute of every day. I'm one mistake for my children starving. I don't know what I'm doing here or where we'll go when you finally decide we need to leave. Riker turned to look at her then, really look at her. You think I'm going to throw you out? Aren't you? I gave you 3 weeks to prove yourself. You did it in 1. The men actually look forward to meals now. The kitchen's cleaner than it's been in 5 years. Your boy works harder than some of my adults. He flicked the cigarette into the dirt. You want to stay through winter? You can stay. Something in Mercy's chest unclenched. Thank you. Don't thank me. Winter here is hell. You might wish you'd left. I've survived worse. Yeah. His eyes held something that might have been respect. I'm starting to believe that. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The temperature was dropping fast, wind picking up. Riker looked at the sky with the expression of a man reading bad news. Storm will hit tomorrow. Make sure we're stocked up. Could be trapped inside for a week. He went back into the house, leaving Mercy alone with the wind and the approaching darkness, and the first real hope she'd felt since her husband died. She should have known better. Hope was dangerous out here. Sick. The storm hit at noon the next day like the sky had declared war. Mercy had seen blizzards before, but nothing like this. Snow fell so thick you couldn't see the barn from the house. Wind screamed around the corners, found every crack, every gap, turned the ranch into a frozen music box playing songs written by something that wanted them dead. By nightfall, they'd lost 2 shutters and part of the roof on the bunkhouse. The men crowded into the main house, filling every available space. 8 cowboys, Riker, Mercy, and her children, all trapped together while the world outside tried to bury them. The 3rd day of the storm, Diego started coughing. It was just a cough at first. By evening, he was burning with fever. By midnight, 2 more men were down. Mercy stood in the main room watching grown men shake with chills under every blanket they owned and felt ice that had nothing to do with weather settle in her stomach. It's the fever. Old Pete, the oldest hand, spoke from his corner. Seen it before, up in Montana. Killed half the camp in a week. There's a doctor in Silver Ridge, someone said. 4 days' ride in good weather. Look outside, Chet snarled. Ain't nobody riding anywhere. All eyes turned to Riker. He stood by the fireplace, face carved from stone, and Mercy saw something she'd never seen in him before. Fear. We wait it out, he said finally. Keep them warm, keep them hydrated. It's all we can do. All we can do is watch them die, you mean? Chet's voice carried an edge of panic that made it dangerous. We should have never let her stay. She brought this curse on us. Shut your mouth, Riker's voice cracked like a whip. She's bad luck. Her and those kids. Everything went to hell the second they arrived. Mercy stepped forward. Her voice came out colder than the wind outside. I've seen this fever before. Every head turned. When? Riker asked. 2 years ago. Went through our town in Kentucky. Killed a lot of people. She looked at the sick men, at Diego's blue lips, at the way Thomas was shaking. But not everyone. Some survived. How? My mother was a healer. She kept records, showed me what worked. The memories came back sharp and bitter, her mother boiling willow bark, forcing liquids, staying up nights while death prowled outside. I can try, but I'll need help, and I'll need everyone to do exactly what I say when I say it. Chet laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. Listen to some widow playing doctor? We're all going to die. Mercy looked at him with eyes that had watched her husband waste away over 6 days, had buried him in frozen ground, had crossed the frontier with nothing but children and stubbornness. Maybe, she said, but we're going to die fighting. Anyone not willing to fight can leave. Silence. The kind that came before thunder. Riker straightened. What do you need? Willow bark if you have it. Honey. whiskey, every clean cloth in this house, water boiling constantly, and space. We need to separate the sick from the healthy before this spreads to everyone. Bunkhouse is half gone. Then we use this room. Move the healthy upstairs. The sick stay down here where it's warm. She was already moving, already planning, muscle memory taking over from when she'd helped her mother. Thomas, start gathering blankets. Sarah. She looked at her daughter, who stood frozen in the corner. Baby, I need you to help your brother. Can you do that? Sarah stared at her mother. Then, for the first time in 3 weeks, she nodded. It wasn't much, but it was something. Let's move, Mercy said. And they moved. But the next 72 hours blurred into a nightmare painted in fever, sweat, and delirium. Mercy became a ghost that never slept, moving between sick men with remedies that might work or might be wishes. She boiled willow bark until the house smelled like medicine and forest, forced liquids between clenched teeth, changed sweat-soaked sheets, listened to grown men cry for mothers long dead while their bodies tried to burn from the inside out. Diego crashed first. His fever spiked so high he started convulsing, and Mercy had to hold him down while Riker forced whiskey-soaked cloth between his teeth so he wouldn't bite through his tongue. She packed him in snow from outside, felt his skin scald her hands, prayed to a nothing she'd stopped believing in. He survived. Then it was young Billy, barely 19, who went blue around the lips and stopped breathing. Mercy pounded on his chest the way she'd seen a doctor do once, forcing air into lungs that didn't want it, refusing to let death win. When he finally gasped and coughed, she collapsed against the wall and shook for 5 minutes straight. Riker found her there. You need to rest. Can't if I stop. 5 minutes. I'll watch them. You don't know? Then teach me. So she did. Showed him how to check for breathing, how to tell if fever was rising or falling, what signs meant they were losing someone. He learned fast, his big hands surprisingly gentle when they needed to be. On the 4th night, Mercy found herself sitting beside Diego's cot, watching his chest rise and fall steadily for the first time in days. Riker sat across from her, his face haggard in the firelight. You saved them, he said quietly. Not yet. Fever could spike again. But you gave them a chance. That's more than the rest of us could do. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Where'd you really learn this? Told you, my mother. You're too good at it, too calm, like you've done it before. Mercy was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the storm was finally dying, wind losing its fury. My husband got sick, she said finally. Same fever. I tried everything my mother taught me. Stayed up for 6 days straight. Her voice cracked. It wasn't enough. He died anyway, and I... She stopped, swallowed. I swore I'd never feel that helpless again. That's why you're fighting so hard. That's why I'll never stop fighting, for anything, ever. Riker looked at her like he was seeing someone new. Your husband was a lucky man. My husband is dead. Yeah, but he had you. That counts for something. Across the room, Thomas lay sleeping next to Sarah, both children curled together for warmth. They'd worked themselves to exhaustion, helping however they could, carrying water, holding hands, singing quiet songs when men needed distraction from pain. Your kids are brave, Riker said, following her gaze. They're terrified. They're just good at hiding it. Mercy stood, every muscle screaming. I should check on the others. Mercy. He said her name like he was testing it. When this is over, you don't have to leave, any of you. I mean it. Why? Because this ranch was dead before you got here. Might as well have been a graveyard. He met her eyes. You brought it back to life, brought us all back. I'd be a fool to let that go. Something warm uncurled in Mercy's chest. Something dangerous. Ask me again when we're not all half dead from plague, she said. His mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. Fair enough. By the end of the week, the fever broke. All of them survived. Diego, Billy, Old Pete, the nervous one named Jack, every single man pulled through. They were weak, shaky, looked like they'd been to hell and barely made it back. But they were breathing. The men who'd been healthy helped the sick ones back to the bunkhouse once Riker and a few hands had patched the roof. The storm had finally cleared, leaving behind a world buried in white. Sun broke through clouds for the first time in 7 days, turned snow into fields of diamonds. Mercy stood on the porch, swaying with exhaustion, watching the sky. Behind her, boots on wood. She didn't turn. "They're calling you something," Riker said. "What?" "Miss Mercy. Started with Diego, spread to the others. Way he tells it, you're some kind of angel." "I'm no angel." "No, you're something better. You're real." He came to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "The men want you to stay. All of them. Even Chet, though he'd rather eat glass than admit it." "And you?" "I stopped wanting you to leave about 2 weeks ago. Took me this long to figure out why." She turned to look at him then. His face was rough, unshaven, exhausted, but his eyes were clear. "Why?" she asked. "Because you're the strongest person I've ever met. Because you fight like hell and don't apologize for it. Because your biscuits are perfect and your kids are good and—" He stopped, jaw working. "Because when I look at you, I don't feel alone anymore." Mercy's breath caught. "Riker." "You don't have to say anything, just think about it, please." He went back inside, leaving her with sun on her face and something blooming in her chest that felt terrifyingly like hope. Inside the house, she could hear Thomas laughing at something Diego said, could hear Sarah's quiet footsteps as she set the table for lunch, a job she'd claimed as her own, could hear the ranch coming back to life around them. Mercy closed her eyes, felt sun and wind, made a decision. She'd come here with nothing, with children and grief and desperation. Maybe she'd stay with something more. Maybe she'd stay with everything. The mountains stood tall against blue sky, no longer threatening. Just there, solid, permanent. Like maybe this place could be. Like maybe they all could be. She went inside to start cooking lunch, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she was smiling. Spring came late that year, and when it finally arrived, it came angry. The snow melted too fast, turning the valley into a mud pit that swallowed wagon wheels and made every step outside the house a battle. The creek behind the ranch swelled into something mean, rushing brown water that carried debris from higher elevations. Mercy watched it from the kitchen window while kneading dough, thinking about how quickly beautiful things could turn dangerous. "You're going to wear a hole in that dough." She turned to find Riker leaning against the doorframe, hat in his hands. He'd started doing that lately, appearing in doorways, finding excuses to be wherever she was. Not crowding her, just there. "It needs the work," she said, turning back to the counter. "So do I, apparently. Diego says I'm getting soft." He moved into the kitchen, poured himself coffee from the pot that was always on. "Says it's your fault." "My fault." "You're cooking. Says a man can't stay hard when he's eating like a king every night." Mercy felt her cheeks warm. "Then maybe you should all go back to whatever you were eating before." "Chet's burnt stew and Old Pete's somehow still raw bacon? I'd rather die." He took a long drink, watching her over the rim of his cup. "The men are getting restless. Winter kept everyone trapped and occupied, but now they need something to do." "What are you thinking?" "Roundup. We lost cattle in the storms, don't know how many. Need to find what survived, see what we're working with." He set the cup down. "I'll be gone 2 weeks, maybe 3. Taking most of the men." Something cold settled in Mercy's stomach. "Most?" "Leaving Chet and Billy here. Chet to manage things. Billy because he's still weak from the fever." Riker's voice went careful. "You'll be safe. Chet knows what'll happen if he steps out of line." "I'm not worried about Chet." "Then what?" Mercy pressed her palms flat on the counter, stared at the dough. "Nothing. It's nothing." She felt him move closer, felt the warmth of him at her back. Not touching, but close enough that she could smell leather and pine and something else that was just him. "Mercy." "I said it's nothing." "You're a terrible liar." She turned then, found him closer than she'd expected, had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I don't like being left, that's all. Reminds me of—" She stopped, swallowed. "My husband used to leave for work every morning. One day he left and came home sick. 6 days later he was gone. So forgive me if I don't love goodbyes." Riker's face did something complicated. "I'm coming back." "You can't promise that." "Yeah, I can. Because I've got reasons to come back now." His hand lifted like he might touch her face, then dropped. "You and those kids, you're the best thing that's happened to this ranch in 10 years. Maybe ever. I'm not walking away from that. Riker, I know it's too soon. I know you're not ready. Hell, I'm probably not ready either. He smiled, and it transformed his whole face into something younger, less haunted. But I want you to know where I stand. So when I come back, we can talk about it proper. Before Mercy could respond, Thomas burst through the door, mud to his knees and grinning. Mr. Boone, Diego says the horses are ready and I can help with the packing if I want. Riker stepped back smooth as anything, like they hadn't just been inches apart discussing things that made Mercy's heart race. That's so. You know how to pack a bedroll? No, sir. Then I guess you better learn. Come on. Thomas followed him out like a puppy, leaving Mercy alone with bread dough and thoughts that wouldn't settle. Through the window, she watched Riker show Thomas how to roll blankets tight, how to tie them so they wouldn't come loose. Watched her son's face light up with the kind of joy she hadn't seen since his father died. Watched Riker's patience, the way he corrected without criticizing, taught without talking down. Sarah appeared at her elbow, silent as smoke. She'd started doing that, materializing without warning. Still didn't talk, but she was present in a way she hadn't been for months. What do you think, baby? Mercy asked quietly. Should we stay here? Sarah looked up at her with eyes too old for 9 years. Then she reached out and took Mercy's flour-covered hand, squeezed once, and went back to the table where she'd been arranging dried beans into patterns. Not an answer. But not nothing, either. The men left at dawn 2 days later, a line of cowboys and pack horses disappearing into mountains that still had snow on their peaks. Mercy stood on the porch with her children, waving until they were gone, trying to ignore the weight in her chest. They'll be back, Mama, Thomas said. I know. Mr. Boone promised. He doesn't break promises. How do you know? Thomas looked at her like she'd asked something obvious. Because he's Mr. Boone. Simple as that. Child logic, where the world still made sense and people did what they said. Mercy wished she could believe things that easily. Behind her, Chet cleared his throat. Breakfast ain't gonna make itself? She turned to find him on the porch, arms crossed. He'd been borderline civil since the fever, but civil and friendly were different countries. It'll be ready in 20 minutes, she said. Better be. Got work to do today, can't waste time waiting on food. He walked off toward the barn, and Mercy felt Thomas tense beside her. I don't like him, Mama. You don't have to like him. You just have to stay out of his way. But staying out of Chet's way proved harder than she'd expected. The foreman seemed to take Riker's absence as permission to push boundaries. Nothing overt. He was too smart for that. But he started showing up in the kitchen more often, standing too close, asking questions that felt like tests. Boone leave you in charge of anything specific? He asked on the third day, leaning against the counter while she peeled potatoes. Just cooking and managing the house. Funny. He didn't mention that to me. Didn't mention leaving you in charge of anything at all. Mercy kept peeling. Then I guess he didn't think it needed mentioning. Or maybe he figures you're just temporary help. Here today, gone tomorrow. She set down the knife, met his eyes. Is there something specific you want, Chet? Because if not, I've got work to do. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Just making conversation. Place gets lonely with most of the men gone. You've got Billy. Billy's a kid, not much for conversation. Chet pushed off the counter, moved toward the door. Be a shame if something happened while Boone was gone. Fire, accident, something like that. Place this isolated helps a long way off. Ice slid down Mercy's spine. Are you threatening me? Threatening? No, ma'am. Just observing that accidents happen. Especially to folks who don't belong somewhere. He settled his hat. You have a good day now. He left, and Mercy stood there gripping the counter so hard her knuckles went white. That night, she checked the locks 3 times and slept with a knife under her pillow. The days crawled past. Mercy kept to her routine, cooking, cleaning, managing the endless small tasks that kept a ranch functioning. Thomas helped where he could, feeding chickens and collecting eggs, and learning to milk the 2 cows they kept for fresh dairy. Sarah stayed close to the house, always watching, always silent. Billy was kind enough, still weak from the fever but trying to pull his weight. He'd spend mornings mending tack in the barn, afternoons checking on the livestock they'd kept close. Evenings he'd sit by the fire whittling while Mercy sewed or Thomas practiced his letters. You're good with the boy, Billy said one night, watching Thomas sound out words from an old newspaper. He's a good student. Reminds me of my little brother. Same age, same stubbornness. Billy's knife paused. Haven't seen him in 3 years. Don't even know if he remembers me. Why'd you leave? Wasn't much choice. Farm couldn't support all of us, and I was the oldest. He went back to whittling. Figured I'd make money, send it back. But money's harder to come by than I thought. You send anything? When I can. Not as much as I'd like. He looked up, met her eyes. That's why I work for Boone. He pays fair, doesn't cheat. Some bosses, they'll short you every chance they get. Not him. Mercy filed that away with all the other things she was learning about Riker Boone. Paid fair, kept his word, inspired loyalty in men who didn't give it easy. Miss Mercy? Billy's voice went careful. Be smart around Chet. He's good at his job, but he doesn't like change, and your change. I noticed. Just watch yourself, especially with Boone gone. She promised she would, but watching herself only went so far. The trouble came on day 8. Mercy was in the garden, the patch of dirt behind the house that she'd been slowly reclaiming from years of neglect. The soil was poor, rocky, but she'd been working it every spare moment, turning it over, pulling stones, mixing in what little compost she could make. It was too early to plant most things, but she could prepare, could make ready. She had her back to the house, hands deep in cold earth, when she heard Sarah scream. Not words. Sarah didn't use words, but a sound of pure terror that sent Mercy running before her brain caught up. She burst into the kitchen to find Chet with his hand wrapped around Sarah's thin arm, the girl's face white with fear. Let her go. Mercy's voice came out dead calm. Found her in the barn, going through my things. Chet's grip tightened and Sarah whimpered. Need to teach her some manners. I said let her go. Or what? You gonna make me? He laughed. You're a woman and a guest. You got no authority here. Mercy's hand closed around the cast iron skillet on the stove. Still warm from breakfast, heavy, solid. Let go of my daughter, now. Something in her voice made Chet look up, made him see whatever was in her eyes. His grip loosened, just a fraction. Sarah twisted free and ran to Mercy, buried her face against her mother's skirt. She shouldn't be in the barn, Chet said, but the bluster was gone from his voice. She's 9 years old and scared of you. She wasn't going through your things. She was probably hiding from you. Mercy kept the skillet raised. Touch her again and I'll break your arm. Then I'll tell Riker you laid hands on a child. See how that works out for you. They stood there, locked in silent battle. Then Billy appeared in the doorway, rifle in hand. Problem here? His voice was young but steady. Chet's eyes flicked between them. No problem, just a misunderstanding. Good, because I'd hate to have to explain to Mr. Boone why his foreman got hurt while he was gone. Billy's grip on the rifle stayed firm. Seems like the kind of thing that'd end with somebody looking for new work. Chet's jaw worked. Then he turned and walked out without another word. Mercy set down the skillet with shaking hands. Sarah was crying silently, tears soaking through Mercy's dress. You okay? Billy asked. Fine. Thank you. Don't thank me. You had it handled. He lowered the rifle. But maybe keep that skillet close for a while. I will. After Billy left, Mercy sank into a chair and held Sarah until the shaking stopped. Thomas appeared from wherever he'd been hiding, his face pale. Is he going to hurt us? He whispered. No. Mercy kissed Sarah's head, reached out to pull Thomas close. No one's going to hurt us. I promise. But promises were easy to make and hard to keep, and that night Mercy barely slept. The next morning, she found a dead chicken in the yard. Neck wrung, left where she'd be sure to see it. Message received. Billy helped her bury it without asking questions. That afternoon, he started spending more time near the house, standing guard without calling it that. The days dragged. 9 became 10, became 11. No word from Riker, but that wasn't unusual. Roundup took time, and they were deep in rough country. Mercy threw herself into work, scrubbed the house top to bottom, organized the pantry, started seedlings in tin cans on the kitchen windowsill, tomatoes and beans and squash for the garden that might not survive, but she'd try anyway. She was elbow deep in bread dough on day 12 when she heard horses. Her heart jumped. Too soon to be Riker. He'd said 2 weeks minimum. But horses meant someone, and someone could mean trouble. She wiped her hands, walked to the door, found Chet already there. "Riders coming," he said. "3 of them." "You recognize them?" "Too far yet." Billy joined them, rifle already in hand. Thomas and Sarah appeared at Mercy's sides like magnets. They waited. The riders came closer, taking their time. Not hurrying, but not dawdling either. When they were close enough to see clearly, Mercy's stomach dropped. Hard men. The kind that wore guns like jewelry and had eyes that didn't blink enough. The leader was tall, lean, with a scar that split his lip into a permanent sneer. His companions looked meaner. They stopped in the yard, horses stamping. "Afternoon," the leader said, voice smooth as oil. "This Boone's place?"
"It is," Chet said. "He ain't here." "So I see. When's he back?" "Week or so. You got business. You can wait." The stranger smiled. "Actually, our business might be with you folks. Heard Boone's been doing well lately, moving cattle, making money. Thought maybe he could spare some for neighbors less fortunate." "We ain't got nothing to spare," Billy said.
"Now that's not very Christian of you." The stranger's eyes found Mercy, traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. Pretty woman like that, cooking and keeping house. Man could get comfortable with an arrangement like that. "You need to leave," Mercy said, voice flat. "Do I?" The stranger leaned forward in his saddle. "Thing is, we rode a long way. Hungry, tired. Seems only hospitable to offer us a meal. Maybe a place to sleep. The answer's no." Billy raised the rifle. "Ride on." The stranger's companions shifted. Hands moved toward guns. "That's a lot of confidence for one kid with a rifle," the stranger said, "against 3 grown men." "3 against 3, Mercy said. "Don't forget me." She'd moved back into the house while they talked, came out now with the shotgun from over the fireplace. Probably hadn't been fired in years, might not even work. But these men didn't know that. The stranger laughed. "You gonna shoot me, sweetheart? I'm gonna paint the barn with you if you're not gone in the next minute." His smile died. "You're making a mistake." Clock's ticking. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the stranger wheeled his horse, his men following. "Boone's gonna hear about this," he called over his shoulder. "He's gonna hear how his people treated neighbors asking for help. Won't sit well." They rode off, kicking up dust. Billy lowered his rifle, hands shaking. "Jesus, Mary and Joseph. I know." Mercy's hands weren't steady either. "Get inside, all of you." They barricaded the doors that night. Billy took first watch, Mercy took second. Sleep came in snatches, filled with dreams of men with guns and children screaming. Morning came gray and cold. The strangers didn't return, but Mercy couldn't shake the feeling they weren't far. "Should have just fed them," Chet said at breakfast, voice bitter. "Given them what they wanted." "Men like that don't stop at one meal," Billy said. "You give them anything, they take everything." Big talk from a kid. Better than coward talk from a man. Chet stood so fast his chair fell over. "Watch your mouth. Both of you, stop." Mercy's voice cracked like a whip. "We've got bigger problems than who said what. Those men are still out there. They know how many of us are here. They know Riker's gone. If they come back with more friends, we're in trouble." "So what do we do?" Thomas asked, voice small. "Good question. No good answer." "We wait," Mercy said finally. "We stay alert. We stay together. And we pray Riker gets back soon." But Riker didn't come back that day. Or the next. On day 14, smoke appeared on the horizon. Not much, just a thin line against gray sky. But Billy saw it from the barn loft where he'd been keeping watch. "Could be a campfire," he said, climbing down. "Could be nothing." "Could be them," Chet said. "Either way, we need to be ready." Mercy checked the shotgun again, made sure it was loaded. "Billy, you keep watch. Chet, check the livestock. Make sure nothing's been tampered with. Thomas, Sarah, you stay inside." "Mama, inside now." They obeyed, but Thomas kept looking back with eyes that wanted to help but knew better than to argue. The day crawled past. The smoke stayed on the horizon, never getting closer, never fading, like someone holding position, watching. Night fell. Billy and Mercy took turns at the windows, rifles ready. Chet disappeared to the bunkhouse, useless as always when things got hard. Around midnight, Sarah tugged at Mercy's sleeve. What is it, baby? Sarah pointed at the window. At first, Mercy didn't see anything. Then she did. Figures, moving in the darkness. At least 4, maybe more. Billy, she whispered. Company. He was there in seconds, rifle up. I see them. They waited. The figures came closer, spreading out, surrounding the house. Then a voice called from the darkness. We know you're in there. We know Boone's still gone. We know it's just you and the kid and that coward foreman, the stranger from before. Back with friends, just like she'd feared. Send out the woman and we'll leave peaceful. Keep her locked up and we'll burn you out. Mercy's blood turned to ice. Don't even think about it, Billy hissed. I'm not. She raised her voice. You're not getting anything from us. Leave now or face the consequences. Laughter in the darkness. Consequences? From who? You gonna shoot all of us? You got maybe 2 guns in there. We got 6 out here. You do the math. Math's about to change, a new voice called from behind the strangers. Mercy's heart leapt. Riker rode out of the darkness like vengeance on horseback, Diego and the rest of the crew spreading out behind him. 8 men, armed and angry, cutting off the strangers' retreat. You picked the wrong ranch, Riker said, voice cold enough to freeze. And you picked the wrong night. The strangers tried to scatter, didn't work. Riker's men knew these mountains, knew the darkness. Within minutes, they had all 6 rounded up, disarmed, on their knees in the dirt. Riker dismounted, walked straight to the house. Mercy met him at the door. You okay? He asked. Fine. They didn't get inside. Good. He turned back to the kneeling men. You know who I am? The scarred leader spat in the dirt. Heard of you. Then you heard what happens to men who threaten what's mine. Riker's hand rested on his gun. You got one chance. Ride out. Don't come back. If I see any of you within 50 miles of this ranch again, I'll kill you where you stand. You can't. I can. I will. And there ain't a lawman within 100 miles who'll care about 6 drifters who disappeared in the mountains. His voice dropped. Test me. Nobody tested him. The strangers rode off into darkness, wounded pride the only thing they'd gained. After they were gone, Riker turned to Mercy, really looked at her for the first time since getting back. You held them off, he said. Billy helped. Billy's a kid. You were the one standing between them and your children. Don't downplay it. He reached out, and this time his hand did touch her face, just briefly. You're something else, Mercy Holloway. I'm a mother. Mothers don't get a choice about being brave. No, but most wouldn't have lasted 2 minutes. You lasted 2 weeks. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I'm sorry I left you alone. You had work to do. Work can wait. He stopped, jaw working. My family shouldn't have to face that alone. The word hung between them. Family. Riker, I know, too fast, too soon, but I can't help how I feel. He dropped his hand, stepped back. Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning. He walked toward the bunkhouse, leaving Mercy standing in the doorway with her heart racing and her thoughts spinning and the word family echoing in her head like a bell. Thomas appeared at her elbow. Is he staying? Yes, baby, he's staying. Good. I like it when he's here. Me too, Mercy admitted. Sarah took her hand, squeezed. Still no words, but the pressure said enough. They went inside together, and for the first time in 2 weeks, Mercy slept without checking the locks every hour. Morning came bright and cold. Mercy woke to find Riker already in the kitchen, coffee made, attempting to cook eggs and failing spectacularly. You're burning them, she said from the doorway. He jumped, turned. You're supposed to be sleeping. Hard to sleep when you can smell smoke. She moved to the stove, took over. When did you get back? What time? Around midnight. Saw the smoke, rode hard. He leaned against the counter, watching her work. Found good cattle. More than expected. Lost maybe 15% to the winter, but the rest are healthy. Should have a strong year. That's good. Yeah, he paused. Mercy, about last night. You don't have to explain. I do. Because I meant what I said. About family. About this being home. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I'm not good at this. At talking. At feelings. But I know what I want. And I want you here. You and Thomas and Sarah. Permanently. Mercy cracked eggs into the pan, buying time to think. I have nothing to offer you. No land, no money, nothing. You have everything. You have strength and courage, and you make this place feel like more than just buildings and dirt. He moved closer. I don't need your money. I need you. And if I said yes, then what? What? Pretend we're a family? We wouldn't be pretending. His voice went rough. I care about those kids like they're my own. And you... He stopped, started again. You scare the hell out of me, Mercy, because I haven't cared about anyone this much since my parents died. But I can't help it. She turned off the stove, faced him. I scare you. Terrify me. Because if something happened to you, nothing's going to happen to me. You can't promise that, not out here. Things happen. People die. I've lost enough already. Then don't lose me. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat of him. Don't push me away because you're afraid. Stay scared, but stay with me anyway. His hands came up to frame her face, calloused palms gentle against her skin. You're asking a lot. I'm asking for a chance, that's all. A chance to see if this could work. It'll work. I'll make it work. He leaned his forehead against hers. Fair warning, though. I'm difficult. I don't talk much. I work too hard. I forget to eat when I'm busy. I'm stubborn. I don't take orders well. My children come first, always. Wouldn't have it any other way. They stood there, breathing the same air, until footsteps on the stairs broke the moment. Thomas appeared, rubbing his eyes. Stopped when he saw them standing so close. Morning, Riker said, stepping back smooth as anything. Morning. Thomas looked between them, 7 going on 8 years old, and already too smart. Are you two going to get married? Thomas! Mercy's face flamed. What? Diego says you should. Says Mr. Boone's been moon-eyed since we got here. Diego talks too much, Riker muttered. So are you. Mercy waited for Riker to deflect, to change the subject, to do what men did when children asked uncomfortable questions. Instead, he crouched down to Thomas's level, met the boy's eyes square. Would that be okay with you? If your mama and I got married? Thomas thought about it with the seriousness of a judge. Would you be my father? If you'd have me. Would you leave? Like my real father did? The question hit like a punch. Riker didn't flinch. Your father didn't leave on purpose, son. He got sick. That's different from choosing to go. He put a hand on Thomas's shoulder. I'm choosing to stay. Understand? I'm choosing you and your mama and your sister every day for as long as you'll have me. Thomas studied him for a long moment. Then he stuck out his hand, grown up serious. Then I guess it's okay. Riker shook his hand, solemn as a business deal. Appreciate that. Sarah appeared in his doorway, silent as smoke. She looked at Riker, at Thomas, at their joined hands. Then she walked over and leaned against Riker's leg. He froze, looked down at the girl who hadn't spoken in months, who barely tolerated touch from anyone but Mercy. Slowly, carefully, he put his hand on her head. Sarah didn't pull away. Mercy's throat closed up. She turned back to the stove, busied herself with breakfast, blinked hard against tears that wanted to fall. Mama's crying, Thomas observed. No, I'm not. Your voice is funny. I'm fine. Riker stood, Sarah still leaning against him. You sure about that? Mercy turned, and whatever he saw in her face made his expression soften. Yeah, he said quietly. Me too. They ate breakfast together, the 4 of them, and it felt like something shifting into place, like pieces of a puzzle finally finding where they belonged. After the meal, Riker stood. I need to talk to the men, let them know what happened, make sure everyone's on alert in case those drifters come back. They won't, Mercy said. You scared them enough. Maybe, but I don't take chances. Not anymore. He paused at the door. Tonight, after dinner, we should talk, properly. About what? About us. About what comes next. His eyes held hers. If you're willing. I'm willing. He smiled, that rare transforming smile, and left. Thomas immediately turned to Mercy. So you are getting married. We haven't decided anything yet. But you're going to. Maybe. Definitely, Thomas said, with the confidence of someone who'd already decided how the story would end. Sarah just smiled. Still no words, but the smile said plenty. That night, after dinner was cleared and the children were in bed, Mercy found Riker on the porch. He'd taken to ending his days there, watching the mountains turn purple in the dusk. She sat beside him. He handed her his coffee cup without asking. They passed it back and forth, sharing warmth and silence. "I talked to the men," he said finally. "Told them you're staying. Told them anyone who has a problem with it can find work elsewhere." "And?" "Chet left." Mercy's head snapped up. "What?" "Packed his gear. Rode out. Said he wasn't working on a ranch run by a woman." Riker's voice was flat. "Good riddance. Should have fired him months ago." "Who's going to be foreman?" "Diego. He's earned it. Men respect him. So do you." They sat quiet for a moment. Then Mercy asked the question that had been building all day. "Are we really doing this? Getting married? Do you want to?" "I asked you first." He turned to look at her, eyes serious in the dimming light. "I want to build something with you. Want to wake up knowing you're here. Want to teach Thomas to be a good man and watch Sarah find her voice again. Want to turn this ranch into a real home instead of just a place where I work and sleep." He reached for her hand. "So yeah, I want to marry you, if you'll have me." Mercy's chest felt too full. "I don't love you yet." "I know. I cared about my husband, and I can't promise I'll ever feel that way again. I'm not asking you to." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I'm asking you to stay. To give this a chance, to let me prove I'm worth the risk. What if I fail? What if I can't be what you need? Then we fail together, but I don't think we will." He pulled her closer. "You're the strongest person I know, Mercy. If anyone can make this work, it's you." She leaned into him, let herself be held, let herself imagine a future where this was normal, where she belonged here, with him, in this harsh, beautiful valley. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay? Okay, I'll marry you." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. Then he kissed her, careful and sweet, like she was something precious that might break. When they pulled apart, he was smiling. "Spring wedding?" he asked. "Fall. Give us time to be sure." "I'm already sure." "Then give me time to catch up." "Fair enough." He stood, pulled her to her feet. "Come on. It's cold out here." They went inside together, and Mercy thought about how much her life had changed in just a few months. From widow with nothing to woman with everything, from lost to found. It wasn't perfect. Nothing was perfect. Riker was hard and closed off sometimes. The ranch was isolated and difficult. The work was endless. But when she checked on her children that night and found them sleeping peacefully, when she felt Riker's presence in the next room like a promise, when she looked at the garden that was slowly coming back to life, she thought maybe perfect didn't matter. Maybe good enough was good enough. Maybe surviving wasn't the same as living, and she was finally learning the difference. She fell asleep that night without checking the locks once, and dreamed of autumn leaves and wedding vows and a future that felt almost possible. Summer came hard and fast, turning the valley into something that shimmered with heat and smelled like dust and sage. The garden Mercy had fought for through spring exploded into life, tomatoes climbing their stakes, beans winding up poles, squash spreading across the ground like they owned it. She worked the rows every morning before the sun got mean, Thomas beside her pulling weeds, while Sarah collected eggs from the chickens they'd added in May. The wedding was set for October, but the ranch didn't wait for ceremonies to treat them like family. Diego started calling Riker Boss Man and Mercy Senora Boss, with equal respect. Old Pete carved wooden animals for Sarah, a whole menagerie that lined the windowsill in their room. Billy taught Thomas how to rope fence posts, patient through every missed throw. And Riker became something Mercy hadn't expected. Not a replacement for what she'd lost, but something different, something solid. He still didn't talk much, but he started showing up in small ways. Fresh coffee waiting when she woke up. The garden fence mended before she noticed it was broken. His jacket appearing on her shoulders when evening turned cold. Thomas's boots oiled and set by the door. Sarah's hair ribbons that had gone missing somehow found and returned. "You're spoiling them," Mercy said one evening, watching him show Thomas how to braid leather into a belt. "That a problem?" "I don't want them expecting things they can't have." "Why can't they have things?" He didn't look up from the braiding, his big hands surprisingly deft.
We got money now. Cattle sold well. No reason kids can't have ribbons and boots that fit. Because when you have things, you get used to them. And then when they're gone,
They won't be gone. He met her eyes. I'm not going anywhere, Mercy. Neither are you. Stop waiting for the floor to drop out. I'm not. You are. You watch me like I'm going to disappear. Check on the kids 3 times a night, like they might vanish. Won't let yourself have anything nice because you're afraid of losing it. His voice stayed gentle. I get it. You lost a lot, but you can't live your whole life braced for disaster. Easy for you to say. You haven't what, lost people? Something dark crossed his face. My parents died when I was 16. House fire. I was in town, came back to ashes and bodies, spent the next year wishing I'd died with them. He went back to braiding. So yeah, I know about loss, but I also know about living, and this, he gestured at Thomas, at the ranch, at her. This is living. Don't waste it being scared. Mercy didn't have an answer for that. She went back inside and made dinner and tried not to think about how much she wanted to believe him. But the mountains had other plans. The first sign came in July, a messenger riding in hard, horse-lathered and blowing. Mercy was hanging laundry when she heard the commotion, came around front to find Riker talking to a young man in worn trail clothes. Cattle showing up sick, the messenger was saying. Jenkins' place first, then the McBride Ranch. Started 2 weeks ago. So far, they've lost maybe 30 head. What kind of sick? Riker's voice had gone sharp. Fever, shaking. They stop eating, get weak, then just drop. Happens fast. 3-4 days from first symptoms to dead. Diego appeared from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. I've heard of this. Tick fever. Spreads through the herd like wildfire if you don't catch it early. How far are Jenkins and McBride? Riker asked. 40 miles north. But if it's spreading, it'll hit us eventually. Riker's jaw worked. How do we stop it? Separate the sick from the healthy. Burn anything they touched. Some folks say there's medicine, but Diego shrugged. I never seen it work. The messenger cleared his throat. That's actually why I'm here. There's a veterinarian in Silver Ridge, just came in from back east. Doc Chambers. Folks say he knows about this fever, has treatments that work. Jenkins is collecting money to bring him up. Treat all the ranches in the valley. How much? $100 per ranch, $200 if you want him to stay and monitor your herd. Riker didn't hesitate. We're in for $200. I'll ride to Silver Ridge tomorrow with the money. After the messenger left, Diego pulled Riker aside. Mercy could hear them through the open window while she peeled potatoes for dinner. Boss, $200 is a lot. We had a good year, but not that good. That's most of our reserve. Then we spend our reserve. I'm not losing the herd to something preventable. And if this doctor can't help, if it's a waste, then it's a waste. But I'm not gambling on our cattle surviving without trying everything. Riker's voice dropped. We lose the herd. We lose everything. The ranch, the house, all of it. I won't risk that. Not now. Mercy set down the potato peeler. She'd known the ranch was their livelihood, but hearing Riker say it so bluntly made it real. They were one disaster away from losing everything they'd built. That night, after the children were asleep, she found Riker doing accounts at the kitchen table, numbers scratched on paper in handwriting that looked angry. How bad is it? She asked. He didn't pretend not to understand. Bad enough. We got money for Doc Chambers and maybe 3 months of expenses after that. If the cattle die anyway, he set down the pencil. We'd have to sell the ranch, start over somewhere else. Where would we go? Don't know. Maybe Wyoming, maybe California, somewhere with work. He rubbed his face. I'm sorry. I should have built up more reserves, should have been smarter. Stop. Mercy sat down across from him. You're doing everything right. Sometimes things just go wrong. That's not your fault. It's my responsibility. This ranch, you, the kids, all of it falls on me. No, it falls on us. We're a family, remember? Or we're about to be. She reached across the table, took his hand. We handle this together. His fingers closed around hers, grip almost painful. I can't lose this place, Mercy. It's the only thing I got that's mine. The only thing I built that matters. That's not true. You've got us. We matter more than land. You say that now, But if we lose the ranch, if I can't provide, then we figure it out, together. She squeezed his hand. I survived worse than this. So have you. We'll survive this too. He looked at her like she was saying something impossible. Then he pulled her around the table and into his lap, buried his face against her shoulder. I'm scared, he said, voice muffled. I know. Me too. They sat like that until the fire burned low and the night got cold, holding on to each other like it could keep the world at bay. Riker left for Silver Ridge the next morning, saddlebags heavy with money they couldn't afford to spend. He took Billy with him for safety. 2 men were harder to rob than 1, and promised to be back in 3 days. Keep everyone close, he told Diego. I don't want the herd spreading out. If the fever shows up, we need to know immediately. Yes, boss. Riker turned to Mercy, voice dropping. You got the rifle? Yes. Keep it close. Anything feels wrong, anything at all, you send Thomas to get Diego. Understand? I understand. He kissed her in front of everyone, quick and hard, then mounted up and rode out without looking back. The ranch felt too quiet without him. Mercy threw herself into work to keep from thinking. She canned vegetables from the garden, cleaned the house top to bottom, started sewing a new dress for Sarah from fabric she'd bought in town months ago. The girl had grown 3 inches since spring, shooting up like a weed. Sarah still didn't talk, but she'd started humming. Tuneless melodies that seemed to come from nowhere, filling the house with sound that wasn't quite music but wasn't silence either. You think she'll ever speak again? Thomas asked one afternoon while they weeded the garden. I don't know, baby. Does it bother you that she doesn't talk? Mercy sat back on her heels, looked at her daughter sitting on the porch steps, arranging stones into patterns. No, she's still Sarah. Still my girl. Words don't change that. Pa used to say she was too quiet, said something was wrong with her. Mercy's hand stilled. Your father loved your sister. I know, but he thought... Thomas pulled a weed with more force than necessary. He thought she should be different, more normal. There's no such thing as normal. There's just people being who they are. Mercy went back to weeding. Sarah's perfect exactly as she is. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. Thomas nodded, but his face said he was thinking about something else. Something harder. Mama, do you love Mr. Boone? The question hit like a rock. Mercy busied herself with a stubborn root. That's complicated. Why? Because I loved your father, and loving someone new feels like I'm replacing him, like he didn't matter. But he did matter. I know that, but it still feels wrong sometimes. Thomas was quiet for a long moment, then, Pa wouldn't want you to be alone forever. He told me once, before he got sick, said if anything happened to him, I had to take care of you and Sarah. But he also said, the boy's voice cracked, he said you deserved to be happy, that you'd given up a lot to be with him, and he wanted you to have good things. Mercy's throat closed. He said that? Yes, ma'am. The night before he died, when you were asleep. He made me promise. Thomas looked up, eyes wet. So I think it's okay. If you love Mr. Boone, I think Pa would say it's okay. She pulled Thomas into a hug, held him while he cried quietly against her shoulder. 8 years old and carrying the weight of a dying man's words. Too young for that burden. Too young for any of this. But children didn't get to choose their burdens. They just carried them and hoped the adults in their lives helped carry them back. Thank you for telling me, she whispered. That helps. More than you know. They finished the weeding in silence, but it was an easier silence, a lighter one. That night, Mercy lay in bed and let herself think about Riker without guilt for the first time. Let herself imagine a future where loving him didn't mean betraying the past, where moving forward wasn't the same as forgetting. She was still thinking about it when she heard the first horse scream. The sound ripped through the night like tearing metal. Mercy was out of bed and grabbing the rifle before her brain caught up. Thomas appeared in the doorway, Sarah behind him, both wide-eyed. Stay here, Mercy ordered. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Diego. She didn't wait for confirmation. Out into the yard, rifle up, heart hammering. The screaming was coming from the corral, high, panicked, the sound horses made when something was very wrong. Diego reached the corral the same time she did, old Pete right behind him. The scene that met them turned Mercy's stomach. 3 horses down. Not dead, but thrashing, foam at their mouths, eyes rolling white with terror. And standing in the middle of the corral, calm as anything, was a mare Mercy didn't recognize. "That's not ours," Diego said, voice tight. "Where'd it come from?" "Don't know, but look at it." Mercy looked closer. The mare was sick. You could see it in the way she stood, head low, ribs showing through dull coat, and on her neck, moving slow but visible even in moonlight, were ticks, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. "The fever," old Pete breathed. "It's here." Diego was already moving, opening the gate, trying to separate the sick mare from the healthy horses. But the damage was done. The other horses had been near her for hours, maybe all day. If tick fever spread like they said, the whole herd could be infected. "Get her out," Mercy said, "away from the others. Then check every horse we've got. We need to know how bad this is." They worked through the night. By dawn, they had their answer. 7 horses showing symptoms. The 3 from the corral plus 4 from the pasture who'd somehow gotten close to the sick mare. "How'd she even get here?" Billy asked. He'd stayed behind when Riker left, still not strong enough for long rides. "Horses don't just appear." "Someone brought her," Mercy said, "or drove her here. Either way, this wasn't an accident." Diego's face went hard. "Those men, the ones who came before, I think it's mighty convenient that a sick horse shows up right after Riker leaves with most of our money." Mercy's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. "How long until the fever kills them?" 3, 4 days usually, sometimes less." "And the other horses? The ones that were exposed?" "Could be fine, could get sick tomorrow, no way to know." Mercy did the math in her head. Riker had been gone 1 day. Would be gone at least 2 more, maybe 3 if he had trouble finding Doc Chambers. By the time he got back, half their horses could be dead. "We separate them," she said. "Sick ones in the far pasture, healthy ones close. We watch them constantly. First sign of fever, we move them to sick pasture." "And then what?" old Pete asked. "Wait for them to die?" "No. Then we fight." Mercy turned to Diego. "Your mother was a healer, right? You said once she knew plants." "She did, but did she ever treat animals?" "Sometimes. Horses, cattle, whatever needed help." Diego's eyes widened. "You think she knew something about tick fever?" "I think people have been dealing with sick animals for a long time before fancy veterinarians came along. Maybe there's something, a treatment, a remedy, anything." Mercy was already moving toward the house. "Can you remember? Anything she used for fevers?" Diego followed, thinking hard. "Willow bark for pain, yarrow for infection. She used to make poultices from—" He stopped. "Garlic. She used crushed garlic mixed with lard, packed it on wounds to draw out poison, said it killed bad things in the blood." "Would it work on ticks?" "I don't know. Maybe? If we got the ticks off first, then treated the bites. It's worth trying." Mercy reached the house, started gathering supplies. "Thomas, I need you to collect every piece of garlic we've got. Sarah, get me the lard from the cold box. Old Pete, start pulling ticks off those horses. Every single one. Use fire to kill them after." They moved like she'd lit them on fire. Within an hour, they had the sick horses staked separate, every tick removed and burned, garlic poultices packed on the worst bites. The horses fought them, weak and fevered, but they managed. "Now what?" Billy asked, clothes soaked with sweat and horseblood. "Now we wait," Mercy said, "and we pray this works." But waiting had never been Mercy's strength. Over the next 2 days, she barely slept. She checked the horses every few hours, changed poultices, forced water between clenched teeth when they'd take it. The mare who'd brought the fever died on the 2nd night, collapsing in the pasture without warning. They burned her body before dawn, watching smoke rise into pink sky. Of the 7 infected horses, 3 started showing improvement, 4 got worse. "It's not enough," Diego said on the 3rd morning, looking at a gelding who'd stopped eating entirely. "We're losing them." "Not yet. We're not." Mercy studied the horse, thinking hard. "The poultices help, but the fever's still too high. We need to bring it down faster." "How?" An idea struck her, dangerous and probably stupid, but they were out of good options. "We cool them down, like we did with the men during the fever. Ice if we had it, but we don't, so water. Cold water from the creek." "You want to dunk sick horses in the creek?" Old Pete looked at her like she'd lost her mind. I want to bring their fever down before it kills them. You got a better idea? Nobody did. So they drove the 4 worst horses to the creek, shallow enough to stand but deep enough to submerge most of their bodies. The horses fought at first, but the cold water seemed to shock them into submission. They stood there shaking while Mercy and Diego poured water over their heads, their necks, anywhere the fever was burning hottest. They kept them in the water for 20 minutes, then moved them to shade and packed them with the poultices again. By evening, 2 of the 4 were eating grass. I'll be damned, Old Pete said, watching a mare who'd been at death's door that morning now pulling at hay. It worked. Some of it worked, Mercy corrected. The other 2 horses were still bad, still might not make it, but 2 saved was better than none. That night, Riker came home. He rode in just after dark, Doc Chambers with him, a thin man with spectacles and a black bag that looked expensive. Riker took one look at the separated horses, at Mercy's exhausted face, at the burn pile where the dead mare had been, and his expression went cold. What happened? Mercy told him. All of it. The sick mare appearing, the infected horses, the treatments they'd tried. Doc Chambers listened while checking the sick horses, his face unreadable. When she finished, Riker was quiet for a long time. You did this yourself, he said finally, while I was gone. You fought the fever alone. Not alone, Diego, Old Pete, Billy, everyone helped. But you led it, you made the calls. He looked at the horses, at the ones who were eating again. How many did we lose? 1. The mare who brought it. Of ours, 3 are recovered, 2 are improving, 2 are still critical. Doc Chambers cleared his throat. Miss, what you described, the garlic poultices, the cold water treatment, that's remarkably close to the protocols I use. Where did you learn it? I didn't, I guessed. You guessed correctly. The garlic has natural antimicrobial properties. The cold water brings down the fever, gives the body a chance to fight. He adjusted his spectacles. I'll examine them properly, administer some additional treatments, but honestly, I think you've already done the hardest part. So they'll live? Mercy asked. Most of them, yes, maybe all, if we're lucky. He picked up his bag. Show me where I can work. After he left, Riker pulled Mercy aside. His face was still hard, but his eyes were soft. $200 for a doctor to tell us you already saved them yourself, he said. The money's not wasted. He'll help the others, make sure they stay healthy. That's not the point. He cupped her face in his hands. The point is you're incredible. You know that? Absolutely incredible. I just did what needed doing. No. You did what most people couldn't do. You saw a problem, you solved it, you saved our horses, and probably our ranch. His voice cracked. I left you alone, and you held everything together. I don't know how to thank you for that. You don't have to thank me. This is my home too. These are my horses too. She leaned into his touch. We're a family. That means we fight for each other. He kissed her then, right there in the yard with Diego and Old Pete watching, deep and grateful and full of something that felt a lot like love. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. October can't come fast enough, he muttered. 2 months. Too long. Mercy laughed despite her exhaustion. We'll survive. And they did. Doc Chambers stayed a week, treated all the animals, declared the ranch clear of tick fever. The 2 critical horses pulled through. The healthy ones stayed healthy. By the time the doctor left, they'd lost only the 1 mare who'd brought the sickness. But the cost was steep. The $200 plus supplies left them with barely enough reserves to make it through fall. If anything else went wrong, another sickness, an early winter, a bad storm, they'd be in trouble. Mercy tried not to think about it, tried to focus on the good, the garden producing more than they could eat, the cattle healthy and fat, the horses recovered, Thomas growing stronger every day, learning ranch work like he'd been born to it. Sarah still silent but smiling more, humming her tuneless songs while she helped with chores. And Riker, watching her like she'd hung the moon, finding excuses to touch her hand in passing, to stand close while they talked, to steal kisses when the children weren't looking. You're staring, she said one evening while making dinner. Can't help it. The men will talk. Let them talk. You're going to be my wife in 6 weeks. They better get used to seeing me look at you. 6 weeks and 3 days, she corrected. You're counting?
Maybe. He grinned. Me too.
But 6 weeks was a long time, and the mountains weren't done testing them. The first snow came in September, 2 weeks early. Just a dusting at first, melting by noon. But it was a warning. Winter was coming early and coming mean. We need to stock up, Riker said, looking at clouds that promised more snow. Food, firewood, supplies, everything we can get before the pass closes. With what money? Diego asked. Whatever we have left. We'll make it work. They made a trip to Silver Ridge, Mercy's first time off the ranch since she'd arrived. The town was small, rough, exactly what she'd expected, but it had a general store, and the store had supplies. Riker bought conservatively, watching every penny. Flour, sugar, coffee, lamp oil, nails, ammunition. Mercy added fabric for winter clothes the children would need, yarn for socks, buttons. They loaded the wagon carefully, making everything fit. On the ride back, Riker was quiet. What's wrong? Mercy asked. Spent too much. We're going to be tight this winter. We'll manage. You keep saying that, because it's true. We've managed everything else. We'll manage this too. She took his hand. Stop carrying the world alone. Let me help. You do help. You do everything. Then trust me when I say we'll be okay. He squeezed her hand but didn't answer. The second snow came 3 days later, heavier, 6 inches that didn't melt. Then another storm, then another. By the end of September, they had 2 feet of snow on the ground and winter was just getting started. The wedding was supposed to be October 15th. Small ceremony, just the ranch hands and maybe a few neighbors if the weather cooperated. Nothing fancy. Mercy didn't want fancy. Just vows and a meal and making it official. But on October 1st, the blizzard hit. It came out of nowhere. Clear skies 1 minute, whiteout the next. Wind that sounded like screaming. Snow so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. They got the animals secured barely in time, everyone stumbling through the storm half blind. Mercy counted heads as they came in. Thomas, Sarah, Diego, Old Pete, Billy, 2 new hands they'd hired in August. Everyone except, "Where's Riker?" she shouted over the wind. "Barn," Diego yelled back. "Checking the horses one more time. He should be back by now." "Can't see the barn from here. He probably can't see the house." Terror spiked through Mercy's chest. "I'm going after him." "You'll get lost." "Then I'll get lost." She grabbed a rope from the porch, tied one end to the rail. "I'm not leaving him out there." She went into the storm before anyone could stop her. The world disappeared. There was only white and wind and cold that cut like knives. Mercy kept the rope in one hand, shuffled forward with the other outstretched, feeling for the barn that should be right there, but might as well be 100 miles away. Her foot hit something. She reached down, felt wood. The barn door. She yanked it open, stumbled inside. The barn was dark, full of horses moving restlessly, and in the back, a shape on the ground. "Riker!" She ran, dropped beside him. He was conscious, holding his leg, face white with pain. "Horse kicked me," he ground out. "Can't walk." "Can you stand if I help?" "Maybe." She got him upright, took most of his weight. He was heavy, solid muscle and bone, and her back screamed, but she'd carried worse. She'd carry him back if she had to. The trip back was nightmare slow. Mercy followed the rope, feeling her way through white nothing, Riker leaning on her and trying not to cry out every time his leg took weight. The wind tried to tear them apart. The cold tried to freeze them in place. But Mercy had survived worse. She'd buried a husband and crossed a frontier and fought fever and drought and men with guns. She wasn't losing Riker to a damn blizzard. When her hand hit the porch rail, she could have cried. Diego yanked the door open, helped her get Riker inside. They laid him on the table, cut away his pants leg. The damage was bad. Deep bruise already turning purple, swelling fast. "Could be broken," Old Pete said. "Get Doc Chambers," Mercy ordered. "Can't. Storm's too bad. Pass will be closed for days, maybe weeks." Which meant they were on their own. Again, Mercy pushed down the panic, made herself focus. "We need to stabilize it. Splint, bandages, something for the pain. Diego, you got any whiskey?" "In the bunkhouse." "Get it. Billy, find me straight pieces of wood. Thomas, boil water. Sarah." She looked at her daughter, who stood frozen in the corner. "Baby, I need you to hold Mr. Boone's hand. Can you do that?" Sarah moved like she was sleepwalking, took Riker's hand in both of hers. He looked up at Mercy, face gray. "It's bad, isn't it?" I don't know yet, but we're going to fix it.
She started carefully probing the leg, watching his face for reactions. When she touched the shin, he gasped. Definitely broken, she said. Maybe in 2 places. Can you set it? I've never set a bone in my life. But you will anyway. It wasn't a question. Mercy met his eyes, saw trust there that terrified her. Yeah, she said, I will.
Setting the bone was brutal. Even with whiskey, even with Diego holding him down and Sarah squeezing his hand hard enough to bruise, Riker's screams filled the house. Mercy worked fast, feeling the bones grind and shift, trying to line them up the way they should be. When she finally got it right, she splinted the leg with boards and strips of torn blanket, wrapped it tight. Riker passed out somewhere in the middle, probably a Mercy. They moved him to this bedroom, hers and soon to be theirs. The children would sleep in the main room with the others until this was over. If it was ever over. The storm raged for 5 days. 5 days trapped inside with food running low and temperatures dropping and Riker burning with fever that came from the broken bone trying to heal wrong. Mercy barely left his side. She changed his bandages, forced water and broth between his lips, packed his leg in snow when the fever got too high. The children helped where they could. The men took turns keeping watch, keeping the fire going, rationing what food they had left. On the 3rd night, Riker woke lucid for the first time. Mercy. She was there instantly. I'm here. The ranch, the men, are they? Everyone's fine. Storm's bad, but we're managing. Food? She hesitated. We're okay. You're lying. We've got enough. Don't worry about it. He grabbed her wrist, grip weak but insistent. How much? Maybe a week if we're careful. 2 if we stretch it. And the storm? Hasn't let up. He closed his eyes. We're in trouble. We've been in trouble before. Not like this. Broken leg, trapped inside, food running out. His voice cracked. This is bad, Mercy, real bad. She laid her hand over his, felt the fever heat in his skin. Then we'll fight, like we always do. I can't fight, can't even stand. So I'll fight for both of us. She leaned down, kissed his forehead. You didn't give up on me when I showed up here with nothing. I'm not giving up on you now. He pulled her down into a kiss, desperate and grateful. When they broke apart, his eyes were wet. I love you, he said. Shouldn't wait any more to say it. I love you, Mercy Holloway. Have since about 2 weeks after you got here. Her chest felt too full. Riker, you don't have to say it back, just needed you to know. But the thing was, she did know. Had known for a while now, been too scared to name it, too scared that naming it would make it real, would give fate something else to take away. I love you too, she whispered, and that terrifies me. He smiled, exhausted and relieved. Yeah, me too. He fell back asleep holding her hand. The storm broke on the 6th day. Mercy woke to silence, real silence, not the muffled roar of wind. She got up, looked out the window, and saw sunlight on snow so deep it had buried the fence posts. Storm's over, Diego said from the main room. How's the food? We got maybe 3 days left, 4 if we skip meals. 3 days. They needed a week minimum before the pass would be clear enough to send someone to town. And that was assuming good weather, which was a bad assumption this time of year. Mercy looked at the men gathered in the main room, at her children watching with wide eyes, at Riker sleeping restlessly in the next room. Then we make it last, she said, and we find other options. What other options? Billy asked. I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. We always do. She said it with more confidence than she felt. But confidence was all they had left to eat, and at least it didn't run out. The figuring out started with pine nuts. Thomas found them first, buried under snow near the trees at the edge of the property. Not many, maybe a handful, but enough to remind Mercy that food didn't only come from stores and pantries. The mountains provided if you knew where to look. There's more, Thomas said, cheeks red from cold, showing her the small cache he'd collected. I saw squirrels digging them up all last fall. They're everywhere if you dig deep enough. Mercy looked at the nuts, then at the forest stretching up the mountainside. Show me where. They spent the next 3 hours digging through snow, following squirrel tracks and Thomas's memory of where he'd seen trees dropping cones months ago. By the time they came back, they had maybe 2 cups of nuts. Not enough to feed 11 people, but enough to stretch what they had. Diego met them at the door. Boss is asking for you, keeps trying to get up. Mercy found Riker halfway out of bed, face gray with pain and effort, legs splinted and useless. What are you doing? She demanded. Need to check the cattle. Storm like that, we could have lost. Diego already checked. We lost 2 head, the rest are fine. She pushed him back down, not gentle. You try that again, and you'll rip the bones apart before they heal. Then you'll lose the leg entirely. That what you want? I want to be useful instead of lying here like someone recovering from a broken leg? That's what you're supposed to be doing. Recovering. She softened her voice. We're handling it, Riker. The ranch is still standing. The animals are fed. We're managing the food situation. What food situation? She hesitated too long. Mercy. What food situation? We're low. 3 days, maybe 4. But I'm working on it. His face went hard. Working on it how? Pine nuts today. Tomorrow I'll try rabbit snares. Diego says there's deer in the high meadows if... Deer? His voice climbed. You're going hunting in snow 6 feet deep? I'm going to feed my children, and you, and everyone else who depends on this ranch. She met his eyes. You want to help? Then rest. Let that leg heal so you can get back to work. That's how you help right now. He grabbed her hand before she could leave. Be careful out there, please. Always am. But careful didn't mean safe, and safe wasn't guaranteed anywhere. The rabbit snares caught nothing the first day, or the second. By day 3, they were down to broth so thin you could see through it, and flour cakes that were more air than substance. Mercy cut her own portions in half, then thirds, slipping the food to Thomas and Sarah when no one was looking. Riker noticed anyway. You're not eating, he said on the 4th night, voice rough. I ate earlier. Liar. I'm fine. You're going to collapse. Then who's going to run this place? He struggled upright despite his leg, despite the pain. You keep sacrificing yourself for everyone else. What happens when there's nothing left to sacrifice? Then I guess we'll find out. His hand shot out, caught her wrist. Don't be stupid. You want to help? Then keep yourself strong. Dead martyrs don't save anyone. She knew he was right, hated that he was right, but watching her children go hungry while she ate felt impossible. That night, old Pete appeared in the kitchen while Mercy was trying to make breakfast out of nothing. Found something you should see, he said quietly. She followed him to the root cellar, the half-buried storage they'd been avoiding because it should have been empty. But Pete led her to the back corner, moved aside some old boards, revealed a cache of potatoes they'd somehow missed. Not many, maybe 10 pounds, starting to sprout but still good. How did we miss these? Mercy breathed. Didn't. I hid them. Pete wouldn't meet her eyes. Back in August, before the first snow, figured we might need emergency supplies. Was going to tell Riker, but then everything went crazy and I forgot. Mercy stared at the potatoes like they were made of gold. Pete, this is enough for maybe a week if we're careful, maybe 10 days. He finally looked at her. I'm sorry I didn't mention it sooner. My head ain't what it used to be. She threw her arms around the old man, who stiffened in surprise, then patted her back awkwardly. You just saved us, she said. You know that? You just saved all of us. The potatoes bought them time. Boiled with the last of the salt and stretched with melted snow, they became soup that actually had substance. The men's faces lost that hollow, desperate look. Thomas and Sarah stopped asking when there'd be more food. Riker's legs started healing, the fever finally breaking on day 7. He couldn't walk yet, couldn't put weight on it, but he could sit up without turning gray, could eat without vomiting. Small victories that felt enormous. Weather's clearing, Diego reported on day 8. Another few days, maybe I can get through to Silver Ridge. How much money we got left? Riker asked from his chair by the fire, leg propped up. Mercy and Diego exchanged looks. $14, Mercy said finally. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. 14, Riker repeated, voice flat. We've got $14 and no food. And winter's barely started. We'll figure something out, Mercy said. With what? Hope? Good intentions? He slammed his hand on the chair arm, frustrated. I should have planned better. Should have saved more. Should have what? Seen the future? Known a blizzard would trap us for a week? Mercy moved in front of him, forced him to look at her. Stop blaming yourself. We're all in this together. and we'll all get out together. How? Good question. No good answer. The answer came from an unexpected place. Billy had been quiet since the storm broke, spending most of his time in the barn with the horses. On day 9, he appeared at breakfast with something in his hands, a leather pouch that looked old and worn. "I got money," he said quietly. Everyone turned to stare. "What?" Riker asked. "I got money. Been saving it for 3 years. Was going to send it to my family, but..." Billy set the pouch on the table, opened it. Inside were coins and a few bills. $140, maybe more. I stopped counting at some point. The silence was absolute. "Billy, that's your money," Mercy said. "For your family." "My family's in Missouri. I'm here. With you folks." He looked around at all of them. "This ranch, you're the closest thing to family I got right now, so the money goes where it's needed." "I can't take that," Riker said, voice rough. "You're not taking it. I'm giving it. There's a difference." Billy pushed the pouch toward him. "You paid me fair when other bosses would have cheated. You kept me on after the fever when I was useless for months. You gave me a place that feels like home." His voice cracked. "Let me help save it." Mercy felt tears burning behind her eyes. Across the table, she saw Diego wipe his face roughly. Riker stared at the money like it was a snake that might bite. Then he picked it up, held it carefully. "I'll pay you back," he said. "Every cent. With interest." "Don't want interest, just want us to make it through winter." Billy smiled, suddenly looking younger than his 19 years. "That's payment enough." The money changed everything. Diego rode to Silver Ridge the next day with a list and instructions to buy smart. He came back 3 days later with a wagon full of supplies: flour, beans, salt pork, coffee, cornmeal, dried fruit, lamp oil, and medicine for Riker's leg. They restocked the pantry, counted and recounted, made plans for rationing that would stretch supplies through spring. With careful management, they'd make it. Barely, but barely was enough. "We should postpone the wedding," Riker said one night, watching Mercy inventory supplies. "Until spring, when things are better." She turned to look at him. "Why?" "Because we can't afford it. Can't afford the food for a celebration. Can't afford..." "I don't need a celebration. I need vows." She came to stand in front of him. "Unless you're having second thoughts." "No, never. I just don't want you to think, I think we've survived hell together. I think we've proven we can handle anything. I think waiting makes no sense when we're already living like we're married." She took his hands. "I want to be your wife, Riker. Not in spring. Now." He pulled her down into his lap, careful of his leg, and kissed her like she was oxygen. "Tomorrow," he said against her mouth. "Tomorrow I have to cook and you can't stand. Then the day after, soon as I can stand long enough to say vows." It took a week before Riker could put weight on his leg without collapsing. Another week before he could walk across the room. But on November 3rd, exactly 3 weeks after the blizzard, he stood unaided in the main room of the ranch house while Diego read from a Bible they'd found in the attic. Mercy wore the dress she'd been making for Sarah, adjusted to fit her at the last minute, simple blue cotton that was nothing special. Riker wore his good shirt and pants, leaning heavily on a cane but standing. Thomas and Sarah stood beside Mercy, scrubbed clean and solemn. The ranch hands lined the walls, awkward in their presence at something so formal. Diego's voice was steady. "Do you, Riker Boone, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Mercy Holloway, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Mercy looked at Riker, at this hard man who'd become soft around her, who'd opened his home when he didn't have to, who'd fought beside her through every disaster, who loved her children like they were his blood, who looked at her like she was everything. "I do," she said, voice strong. "Then by the power vested in me by, well, nobody really, but we're doing this anyway. I pronounce you husband and wife." Diego grinned. "You can kiss her now, boss." Riker did, thorough and slow, and the ranch hands whooped and hollered like they'd won something. The celebration was small, a meal made from their carefully rationed supplies, stretched to feel abundant through sheer will. Old Pete played a fiddle Mercy hadn't known he owned. Diego sang songs in Spanish that made him laugh and cry at the same time. Thomas danced with Sarah, spinning her until she smiled that rare smile. And Mercy sat beside her husband, and felt something she hadn't felt since before her first husband died. Peace. It didn't last. The peace shattered 3 days later when they found the first dead cow. Diego discovered it in the morning, half buried in snow in the far pasture, not killed by cold or predators, poisoned. Someone had cut open its stomach and filled it with something toxic, let it eat itself to death from the inside. "Check the others," Riker ordered, already moving despite his barely healed leg. "Every single head. If there's more..." There were more. 3 cows dead, 2 more sick and dying. Out of a herd of 43, losing 5 was catastrophic. "Who would do this?" Mercy asked, staring at the carnage. "Same people who sent the sick horse. Same people who've been trying to destroy us since summer." Riker's voice was cold fury. "They want the ranch. Figure if they make it too expensive to keep, I'll sell cheap. Will you?" He looked at her like she'd suggested murder. "This ranch is mine. Ours. I'd burn it to the ground before I'd sell it to whoever's behind this." They burned the dead cattle, saved what meat they could from the ones that were still clean. The 2 sick cows they tried to save, but whatever poison had been used was fast and brutal. Both were dead by evening. That night, Riker called a meeting. "We're being targeted," he said bluntly. "Someone wants us gone and they're willing to kill livestock to make it happen. Could be land speculators, could be someone who wants the water rights, could be pure meanness. Don't matter. What matters is, we're not leaving." "What do we do?" Billy asked. "We guard the herd. Shifts. 24 hours. 2 men at a time, armed. Anyone comes near our cattle who isn't supposed to be there, you challenge them. They don't leave, you shoot." His eyes were flint. "I'm done playing nice." "Boss, if we shoot someone," Diego started, "then we shoot someone. I'll deal with the law. But I'm not losing more cattle to sabotage." They set up the shifts that night. Mercy wanted to argue, wanted to say there had to be another way, but she'd seen the dead cows, seen the deliberate cruelty. Some people didn't respond to reason. The first week passed without incident. The second week, they caught someone. It was Billy and one of the new hands on duty, midnight shift. They heard the cattle get restless, investigated, found a man cutting fence wire. When Billy challenged him, the man ran. They caught him 100 yards out, dragged him back to the ranch house. By the time Riker got there, the man was tied to a chair and Diego was standing over him with a rifle. "Who sent you?" Riker demanded. The man, thin, nervous, probably not even 20, shook his head. "Nobody. I was just cutting our fence at midnight for fun." "Try again." "I don't know his name. Some rich guy from back east. Said he'd pay good money if we could drive you off the land. Said it'd be easy, that you were barely hanging on anyway." Mercy felt cold settle in her stomach. "How much did he offer?" $100 to anyone who helped. More if we succeeded." "And the poisoned cattle? The sick horse? That was you?" "Not me. Others. I needed the money. My family's starving and I heard there was work and..." "So you decided to starve mine instead." Riker's voice could have cut glass. "You got any idea how many people depend on this ranch? How many mouths I'm feeding?" The man started crying. I'm sorry. I didn't think..." "No, you didn't." Riker looked at Diego. "Take him to Silver Ridge, turn him over to the sheriff. Let the law handle it." "Boss, the law out here..." "I know, but I'm not killing some kid who made a stupid choice. We're better than that." He turned back to the prisoner. "You tell your rich friend from back east that Riker Boone doesn't scare. Tell him next time he sends someone onto my land, they won't make it back. Understand?" The man nodded frantically. Diego hauled him up, started for the door. Riker's voice stopped them. "And tell him the ranch isn't for sale. Not now. Not ever. Not for any price." After they left, Mercy moved to stand beside Riker. His hands were shaking, with anger or adrenaline or fear, she couldn't tell. "This is only going to get worse," she said quietly. "I know. Whoever's behind this has money and resources and doesn't care who gets hurt. I know that too. So what do we do?" He turned to look at her, and his eyes were the hardest she'd ever seen them. "We fight. We guard what's ours. We make it through this winter and plant in spring and build until we're too strong to push around." His jaw set. "And we do it together, as a family, because that's what we are now." Mercy took his hand, felt the calluses and scars and strength. "As a family," she agreed, "but family didn't make you bulletproof.
Family just gave you something worth fighting for.
The fighting came sooner than expected. 2 nights after Diego left for Silver Ridge, riders appeared on the ridge overlooking the ranch. 6 of them, silhouetted against moonlight, just sitting there, watching. They didn't approach, didn't do anything but watch. But the message was clear. We know where you are. We know how many you are. We're coming. Riker doubled the guards, put everyone on alert. Thomas and Sarah weren't allowed outside without an adult. Mercy kept the rifle by the stove while she cooked. The riders came back the next night. And the next. Always watching, never attacking. The tension wound tighter every day. On the 4th night, they made their move. Mercy was in bed, actually in bed with Riker for the first time since the wedding, both of them too exhausted and stressed for anything but sleep, when she heard Sarah scream. Not the wordless terror scream from before. Actual words. "Mama, fire!" Mercy was out of bed before she fully woke up, Riker right behind her despite his bad leg. They burst into the main room to find Sarah pointing at the window, at orange light that shouldn't be there. The barn was on fire. "Everyone up!" Riker shouted. "Get water! Save the horses!" They ran into chaos. Flames already climbing the walls, smoke pouring through gaps in the boards. The horses screaming, trapped inside and panicking. Diego and Billy were already there, trying to get the barn doors open. The wood was warped from heat, stuck. Riker threw his weight against it despite his leg, and the door finally gave. Horses poured out, wild-eyed and terrified. Mercy counted them as they passed. 9, 10, 12. They'd had 15 in there. "There's more inside," she shouted. "It's too hot." Diego started. Mercy ran inside anyway. The smoke hit her like a wall, thick and choking. She dropped low, pulled her nightgown over her mouth, felt her way toward the stalls at the back where the noise was coming from. She found 2 horses trapped, their stall door jammed. She yanked at it, burned her hands on hot metal, kept pulling. The door gave and the horses bolted past her, heading for the exit. She turned to follow and saw the last horse, young gelding, barely a year old, collapsed in the corner, not moving. Mercy grabbed his halter, pulled. He was heavy, dead weight. She pulled harder, muscles screaming, lungs burning from smoke. "Mercy!" Riker's voice distant through the roar of flames. "Get out!" She pulled one more time and the horse lurched to his feet, following her on instinct. They stumbled toward the door together, the ceiling starting to collapse behind them. They made it out seconds before the roof caved in. Mercy collapsed in the snow, coughing so hard she thought she'd break ribs. Riker was there, rolling her away from the heat, checking for burns. "You stupid!" He couldn't finish, just held her while she coughed. They watched the barn burn. There was no saving it, no stopping it. They just made sure the fire didn't spread to the house or the other buildings. By dawn, all that was left was smoking ruins and the smell of destruction. "All the hay," old Pete said, staring at the wreckage. "All our winter feed. It's gone." He was right. The barn had held 6 months of hay for the horses, plus stored grain and supplies they couldn't replace until spring. Without it, feeding the animals through winter would be nearly impossible. "There's feed in Silver Ridge," Mercy said, voice hoarse from smoke. "We can buy—" "With what money?" Riker asked flatly. "We spent everything on food. There's nothing left." "Then we sell something, cattle, horses, something." "In winter, nobody's buying. And even if they were, selling livestock to buy feed for livestock makes no sense." He was right, but Mercy didn't want to hear it. Didn't want to face that they might actually lose this time. Diego appeared, face grim. "Found something you should see." He led them to the tree line behind where the barn had stood. In the snow were boot prints, several sets leading to and from the barn. And near the prints, a can that smelled like kerosene. "It was set," Diego said, deliberately. Riker picked up the can, face expressionless. Then he hurled it into the trees so hard it dented against a trunk. "That's it," he said. "I'm done." "Done with what?" Mercy asked. "Being defensive, waiting for them to attack." He turned to Diego. "When you get back from Silver Ridge, bring the sheriff. I don't care if he's useless. I want this on record. Someone's trying to kill us and I want it documented." "Boss, the sheriff won't—" "Then I'll go over his head. Write to the territorial governor if I have to, but I'm not letting this stand." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "They want a war? They'll get one. but it'll be legal and documented, and they'll regret ever targeting this ranch. Over the next week, they salvaged what they could and tried to figure out how to feed 15 horses with no hay and no money. Mercy started cutting corners everywhere. Smaller meals, colder rooms, every lamp conserved. They fed the horses what grain they had left, supplemented with branches and bark. It wasn't enough. Within days, the horses started losing weight. "We have to sell some," Diego said. "Keep the strongest, sell the rest while they're still healthy enough to fetch a price." "Who's buying horses in November?" Riker asked. "The logging camps up north, they always need workhorses. Price won't be great, but it's something." Riker looked at Mercy. "What do you think?" She thought about the horses she'd saved from the barn, about working to keep them alive just to sell them off. But she also thought about Thomas and Sarah and keeping them fed through winter. "Do it," she said, "but we keep enough to work the ranch come spring." They sold 7 horses for prices that made Mercy want to cry, but the money bought hay to feed the remaining 8, plus some extra supplies. It hurt, but they survived. The sheriff came and went, took statements, promised nothing. Riker wrote his letter to the territorial governor, sent it with Diego on his next trip to town. And through it all, winter kept coming. December arrived with temperatures so cold that water froze in the pipes. They had to break ice in the creek every morning just to water the animals. The wind was constant, howling through gaps they couldn't seal, stealing warmth faster than they could make it. They started burning furniture to stay warm. First the spare chairs, then the table from Mercy's room. Then pieces nobody would miss. Every stick of wood they burned was a stick they didn't have to cut, and cutting firewood in 6-foot snowdrifts was brutal work. Thomas came inside one afternoon, hands blue despite gloves, and couldn't stop shaking. Mercy packed him by the fire, rubbed his hands until feeling came back, tried not to think about frostbite. "It's too cold out there for him," she told Riker that night. "It's too cold for anyone. But the work needs doing. He's 8 years old. And he's tougher than most grown men I know. Gets that from you." Riker pulled her close, both of them huddled under blankets by the fire. "One more month. Just make it through January and the worst will be over." But January was still 3 weeks away, and the worst kept finding new ways to hurt them. Sarah got sick on December 15th. Started as a cough, turned into fever by nightfall. Mercy recognized it immediately, the same sickness that had swept through the ranch in spring. "No," she whispered, pressing her hand to Sarah's burning forehead. "Not again." But again it was. By morning, Thomas was sick too. By evening, Billy and one of the new hands were down. Mercy fought it the same way she'd fought before. Willow bark tea, cold compresses, forcing fluids. But she was exhausted, worn down by months of crisis after crisis. Her hands shook when she mixed medicine. Her vision blurred from lack of sleep. On the 3rd night, Riker found her collapsed over Sarah's bed, passed out from exhaustion. He carried her to their room, laid her down. When she tried to get up, he pushed her back. "Rest," he ordered. "I can't. Sarah needs—" "I'll handle Sarah. Diego's with Thomas. Old Pete's watching Billy. You need to sleep or you'll be the next one sick." "But sleep. That's an order from your husband." She was too tired to argue. Let her eyes close. Was asleep before she knew it. She woke 12 hours later to find Riker sitting beside the bed, still dressed, eyes red from lack of sleep. "The kids?" she asked immediately. "Fever broke an hour ago. Both of them. They're asking for you." His voice was rough. "Billy's still bad, but he's young. He'll make it." Mercy sagged with relief so strong it hurt. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I didn't do anything you hadn't already done." He took her hand. "You saved them, Mercy. Again. Like you save all of us." Don't say you're just doing what needed doing. You're more than that. He stopped, started again. "You're the reason this ranch is still standing. The reason we're all still alive. I need you to know that." She looked at him, this hard man who'd become her husband, her partner, her everything, and felt something crack open in her chest. "I was so scared," she whispered. "When Sarah got sick, I thought I was going to lose her, like I lost her father, like I lose everything." "You didn't lose her. You fought and you won." He pulled her into his arms. "You always win, Mercy. Even when it seems impossible. That's who you are." She let herself cry then, really cry, for the first time since the blizzard.
cried for the fear and the exhaustion and the endless weight of keeping everyone alive. Riker held her through it, steady and strong, until the tears finally stopped. When she pulled back, his shirt was soaked and his face was wet too. "We're a mess," she said.
"Yeah, but we're a mess together." He smiled, tired but real. That counts for something. It counted for everything. By Christmas, everyone had recovered. The sickness passed through without killing anyone, small miracle in a season of disasters. They celebrated with a meal made from their dwindling supplies, gifts carved from wood and sewn from scraps. Riker gave Mercy a ring he'd carved from bone, delicate and beautiful. She gave him a new shirt she'd made from an old blanket, dyed dark with walnut husks. Thomas got a wooden horse from old Pete. Sarah got hair ribbons from Diego. It wasn't much, but sitting around the fire together, sharing what little they had, Mercy felt rich. "Next year will be better," Riker said, raising his cup of weak coffee in a toast. "Next year we'll have a real celebration." "Next year," everyone echoed. They had no way of knowing if next year would come. No guarantee they'd make it through the winter. But they had each other, and right now, that felt like enough. Outside, snow fell soft and steady, covering the burned ruins of the barn, hiding the scars the ranch had taken. Inside, the fire burned warm, and the family Mercy had found in the wilderness held together against the cold. It wasn't the life she'd imagined when she'd buried her first husband. Wasn't the safe, comfortable future she'd once dreamed of. It was harder, scarier, more brutal than anything she'd survived. But it was hers, theirs, and she'd fight to keep it until her last breath. January came mean and stayed that way. The cold settled into the valley like something with teeth, temperatures dropping so low that spit froze before it hit the ground. The remaining horses huddled in the makeshift shelter they'd built from barn scraps, breath steaming in air that hurt to breathe. The cattle clustered in the lee of the hills, losing weight despite the hay they could barely afford. Mercy counted supplies every morning, trying to make the numbers work. They didn't work. Even rationed to the bone, they'd run out of flour by mid-February. Coffee was already gone. Sugar was a memory. They were eating beans and salt pork and whatever game Diego could trap, which wasn't much because apparently even the rabbits had more sense than to be out in this weather. "We need to talk about spring," Riker said one night after the children were asleep. He sat by the fire, legs still bothering him when the cold got bad, working through numbers that wouldn't add up no matter how many times he tried. "What about it?" Mercy was mending Thomas's pants for the third time, the fabric so worn she was basically sewing air to air. "We don't have money for seed. Can't plant without seed, can't eat without planting." He set down the pencil, rubbed his face. "I could take a loan from the bank in Silver Ridge, put the ranch up as collateral. And if we can't pay it back, then we lose everything." Mercy's needle paused. "There has to be another way." "I'm open to suggestions." She thought about it while she finished the seam, tied off the thread, bit it clean. "What if we don't plant everything? Just enough to feed ourselves and the animals. Forget about selling crops this year. Focus on survival." "That's just delaying the problem. We need money to run this place. Can't do that without selling something." "So we sell cattle in spring. Prices are better then anyway. We already sold 7 horses. Sell too much cattle and we won't have a herd to rebuild with." His voice went tight. "Every choice takes something we can't afford to lose." Mercy set down the mending, moved to sit beside him. Outside, wind howled around the corners of the house, searching for ways in. "Remember what you told me back in October about not living scared? That was before the barn burned, before we spent every cent we had just to survive winter. But we did survive. We're still here, still fighting." She took his hand. "Maybe the lesson isn't about money or cattle or crops. Maybe it's about trust, about believing we'll figure it out like we figured out everything else." He looked at her with something that might have been hope or might have been exhaustion. "You really believe that?" "I have to, because the alternative is giving up, and I didn't cross a frontier with 2 kids and nothing in my pockets just to quit now." She squeezed his hand. "We're going to make it, Riker. I don't know how yet, but we will." The answer came from an unexpected direction 3 days later. A rider appeared mid-morning, struggling through snow that came up to his horse's chest. Mercy saw him from the kitchen window, called for Riker. They met the man on the porch, older gentleman, well-dressed despite the cold, riding a horse that cost more than most people made in a year. Mr. Boone? The man asked, dismounting stiffly. That's me. Wallace Preston, Territorial Land Office. He pulled papers from his saddlebag. I'm here about your letter to the governor. Riker went very still. That's so. May we speak inside? It's rather cold. They brought him in, sat him by the fire, offered coffee they couldn't spare. Preston accepted it gratefully, warmed his hands on the cup. Your letter made quite an impression, he said. Detailed account of harassment, property destruction, attempted sabotage. The governor takes these matters seriously, especially when they involve land speculation and intimidation. Did some investigating, did you? Riker's voice was careful. Extensively. Took some time, which is why I'm here in January instead of December, but we identified the party behind the attacks. Preston pulled out another document. Eastern Investment Group. Calls themselves Rocky Mountain Development Corporation. They've been buying up ranches across the territory, usually by making life so difficult for current owners that they sell cheap just to escape. And you're here to tell me what? That it's legal? Actually, I'm here to tell you it's not. What they've done, the poisoned livestock, the arson, the threats, all of it violates territorial law. We've issued warrants for 3 men tied to the organization. They're in custody as of last week. Preston smiled. And the corporation itself is facing sanctions, substantial fines, possible dissolution. Mercy felt something loosen in her chest. So they can't come after us anymore? Not legally, and we'll be watching to make sure they don't try anything illegal either. Preston sipped his coffee. There's more. The territorial government has started a fund for ranchers who've suffered losses due to this group's activities. You're eligible for compensation. How much? Riker asked bluntly. Enough to cover your losses and then some. We estimate the barn alone was worth $300. Add in the poisoned cattle, the sick horse, lost feed and supplies. Preston consulted his papers. We're authorized to offer you $1,200 in compensation. The silence that followed was so complete Mercy could hear her own heartbeat. 1,200, Riker repeated, voice flat, like he didn't believe it. Plus an additional 300 as a grant for rebuilding. The territory wants to encourage ranchers to stay and fight rather than sell out. Preston set down his cup. I'll need you to sign some paperwork, provide documentation of your losses. But the money's real, Mr. Boone. Should have it to you within the month. Mercy looked at Riker. His face had gone carefully blank, the way it did when he was feeling too much to show anything. That's... He stopped, started again. That changes everything. That's rather the point. Preston stood, offered his hand. The territory needs people like you, people who don't run when things get hard, people who build instead of just take. He shook Riker's hand firmly. You've earned this, Mr. Boone. Both of you. After Preston left, Mercy and Riker sat in silence for a long time. $1,500, Riker finally said. That's enough to rebuild the barn, buy seed, restock everything we lost, maybe even hire another hand or two come spring. It's enough to stop barely surviving and start actually living again, Mercy said quietly. He turned to look at her, and his eyes were wet. We made it. All of it. The fever, the attacks, the winter from hell. We actually made it through. She kissed him then, soft and slow, tasting coffee and relief and something that felt like the beginning of hope. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you. Did I mention that recently? Not in the last few hours. Well, I do. Love you so much it scares me sometimes. I love you too. Even when you're being stubborn and refusing help. Especially then, he said and smiled. The money arrived in February, and with it came spring planning. Riker and Diego spent hours drawing up designs for a new barn, bigger than the old one, better ventilated, built to last. Mercy cataloged what seeds they'd need, what supplies, what repairs the house required after a brutal winter. We should add on, Riker said one evening, studying the house like he was seeing it new. Another bedroom for the kids. Maybe a proper pantry, space for all of us to actually live instead of just survive. That'll cost money. We have money now, and more coming when we sell cattle in spring. He pulled her against his side. I want to build something permanent, something that says we're not going anywhere. So they planned and dreamed, and for the first time since Mercy had arrived at the ranch, the future felt like something to look forward to instead of something to fear. March brought the thaw. Snow melted in rushing streams, the creek swelling to a river. The valley turned brown and muddy, ugly in that particular way of places between winter and spring. But underneath the ugly, things were growing. Mercy's garden came back to life first. The perennials she'd planted last year pushed through half-frozen soil, determined to bloom despite everything. She worked the rows, Thomas beside her, preparing for the season ahead. "Mama?" Thomas asked one afternoon while they turned compost. "Are we rich now?" Mercy laughed. "No, baby. We're comfortable. That's different. But we have money. We have enough. That's better than being rich." She sat back on her heels, looked at her son. 9 years old now, grown 3 inches over the winter, face losing its baby roundness. Being rich means you have more than you need. Being comfortable means you have exactly enough. The first makes you soft. The second makes you strong. Thomas thought about that while he dug. "I like being strong." "Me too." Sarah appeared from the house, carrying a basket. She set it down, started collecting stones from the turned earth, arranging them by size. Still didn't talk much. A word here, a sentence there, but mostly silence. But it was a different silence now. Content instead of broken. "Sarah spoke to me yesterday," Thomas said casually. "Told me to stop eating her biscuit." Mercy's head snapped up. "She did?" "Yeah, got real mad about it too." He grinned. "Sounded just like you when you're angry." Mercy looked at her daughter, who was humming while she worked, completely absorbed in her task. Small victories, slow progress, but progress nonetheless. That night she mentioned it to Riker. "She's healing," he said. "Took almost a year, but she's getting there. Because she feels safe, because this is home now." "Is it?" He turned to look at her. "Home for you too? Not just them." Mercy thought about that. Thought about the widow who'd arrived with nothing, desperate and broken. Thought about everything they'd survived, fever and sabotage and winter that tried to kill them. Thought about the woman she'd become in the process. "Yeah," she said finally. "It's home, more than anywhere else has ever been." The barn raising happened in April. Word had spread somehow about what the ranch had survived, about the government compensation, about Riker Boone being too stubborn to sell out. Neighbors started showing up, ranchers from 40 miles out, people Mercy had never met, all offering to help build. "We take care of our own out here," one grizzled old-timer said, pounding nails like he was half his age. "What happened to you could have happened to any of us. You stood your ground, so we stand with you." They built the barn in 3 days. Bigger and better than the old one, with space for 20 horses and hay storage that would last 2 winters. When they finally set the roof beam, Riker stood on the ladder and looked out at the valley spread below them. "This is it," he said quietly, just to Mercy. "This is what we fought for, what we almost lost, what we kept." She squeezed his hand. "What we built together." The neighbors stayed for a celebration that night, music and dancing and food that actually tasted good because they could afford to make it right. Old Pete played his fiddle while Diego called dance steps in Spanish and English mixed together. Thomas spun Sarah until she laughed out loud, a sound Mercy hadn't heard in over a year. Mercy danced with Riker in the yard under stars that felt close enough to touch, and for the first time since her first husband died, she felt something other than survival. She felt joy. "What are you thinking?" Riker asked, holding her close while the music played. "I'm thinking about how far we've come, how different everything is from when I arrived. You arrived broke and desperate. Now you're—" He smiled. "Still broke but less desperate." She laughed and hit his shoulder. "We're not broke anymore." "No. Now we're comfortable." He pulled her closer. "Thanks to you. Your stubbornness. Your refusal to quit even when any sane person would have run. I didn't have anywhere to run to. This was it. Last chance. Maybe that's what made you fight so hard, knowing there was no fallback, no safety net." His voice went serious. "You taught me that. How to fight when everything's on the line. How to keep going when stopping seems easier. I learned it from you. You were fighting long before I got here. I was surviving. You taught me the difference between surviving and living." He stopped dancing, cupped her face in his hands. "I survived alone for years. But I'm living now. With you. With the kids. With all of this." He gestured at the ranch, the new barn, the people dancing in their yard. You gave me that. Mercy felt tears burn behind her eyes. We gave it to each other. Yeah, we did. They stood there while the music played around them, holding each other in the middle of the life they'd built from nothing. Spring became summer, and the ranch transformed. The garden exploded with vegetables. The cattle fattened on mountain grass. The horses filled the new barn with sound and life. They hired 2 more hands, good men who'd heard about the ranch that survived everything and wanted to be part of something that endured. Mercy expanded the garden, adding herbs and flowers alongside the practical vegetables. Sarah helped her plant, still mostly silent, but occasionally offering opinions in a voice that was starting to find itself again. Roses here, Sarah said one morning, pointing to a bare patch. You think so? Pretty, smell good, make happy. Simple logic, hard to argue with. So they planted roses. Thomas spent his days learning ranch work from Riker and Diego, coming home exhausted and filthy and grinning. He'd started calling Riker Pa without anyone telling him to, the word slipping out natural as breathing. The first time it happened, Riker went very still. Then he pulled Thomas into a hug and didn't let go for a long time. Is it okay? Thomas asked, voice muffled against Riker's shirt. Calling you that? It's more than okay, Riker said, voice rough. It's an honor. They sold cattle in June, getting good prices at market. Paid back Billy every cent he'd lent them, with interest despite his protests. Restocked supplies for winter, put money aside for emergencies, spent what was left on improvements. We're actually getting ahead, Riker said one night, going through the books. Not just breaking even, actually making money. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not surprised. He paused, searching for words. I'm grateful for all of it. The struggles made us stronger, made this, he gestured around them, mean something. Mercy understood what he meant. The ranch wasn't just land and buildings anymore. It was proof. Proof that they could survive anything. Proof that starting over was possible. Proof that family wasn't just blood. It was choice and fight, and refusing to quit when quitting would be easier. August brought a letter from the territorial governor, thanking them for their testimony against Rocky Mountain Development Corporation. The company had been dissolved, its assets seized, its principals facing criminal charges. Other ranches that had been targeted were receiving compensation too. We started something, Mercy said, reading the letter. Us refusing to sell? It made other people fight too. You started it. Your stubbornness inspired my stubbornness. Riker kissed her temple. We make a good team. The best team. They celebrated their first anniversary in November, a year since they'd gotten married in the middle of the worst winter either of them had ever seen. Celebrated it with a real meal this time, store-bought luxuries they could actually afford, in a house that was warmer and fuller and more alive than it had been 12 months ago. To surviving, Riker toasted, raising his glass. To more than surviving, Mercy corrected. To living. To living, everyone echoed. That night, after the children were asleep and the ranch was quiet, Mercy stood on the porch looking at stars. The valley spread below her, dark except for scattered lights from distant neighbors. Her valley now. Her home. Riker joined her, wrapped a blanket around both their shoulders. What are you thinking about? He asked. Everything. How scared I was when I first got here. How certain I was that we'd fail. How wrong I was about all of it. She leaned into him. I thought survival was the best I could hope for. Turns out I was aiming too low. What are you aiming for now? Happiness, family, building something that lasts beyond us. She turned to look at him. A legacy. Not just for us, but for Thomas and Sarah. So they know where they came from. Know what we fought for. They'll know. We'll make sure of it. His arm tightened around her. And maybe we'll add to that legacy. More kids, more family, more life. Mercy's breath caught. You want more children? With you? Yeah, if you do, if you're ready. He looked uncertain, vulnerable in a way he rarely showed. Are you? She thought about it. About another baby. About watching Riker become a father to a child that was his from the beginning. About Sarah and Thomas having a sibling. About expanding this family they'd built from broken pieces. Ask me again in spring, she said, when the future feels less like survival and more like possibility. Spring it is. Winter came again, but gentler this time. They were prepared, barn full of hay, pantry stocked, money in reserve. When the first snow fell, it felt less like a threat and more like a season. Something to endure, sure, but something they knew how to handle. Mercy spent the quiet months teaching Sarah to read, watching her daughter sound out words with fierce concentration. Watched Thomas learn to do sums with Diego, his young mind sharp and quick. Watched Riker transform from the hard, closed-off man she'd first met into someone who laughed easily and loved openly and built things instead of just protecting what he had. And she felt herself transformed too. From the desperate widow who'd arrived with nothing to a woman who knew her worth. Who'd fought for everything she had and won. Who'd learned that strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about putting yourself back together and keeping going. "Mama?" Sarah said one night, voice quiet but clear. "Are we staying forever?" Mercy looked up from her sewing. "Do you want to?" Sarah nodded. "Here's good, here's home." Simple as that. Child wisdom cutting through all the complexity to the truth underneath. "Then we're staying forever," Mercy promised. Spring came early that year, the valley waking up like it had been waiting. The garden exploded into life faster than Mercy could keep up with. The cattle calved healthy and strong. The horses filled the pastures with movement and sound. And on a morning in late March, Mercy woke up feeling different. Felt it in her body, in the way her stomach churned, in the way certain smells suddenly bothered her. She knew before she confirmed it. Knew with the certainty of someone who'd done this before. She was pregnant. She told Riker that night, watching his face carefully for his reaction. He went very still. Then he picked her up and spun her around, laughing like a man who'd won something precious. "When?" he asked, setting her down carefully. "October, I think. Maybe November." "A baby. Our baby." He pressed his hand to her still flat stomach, face full of wonder. "Thank you." "Thank you? I'm the one carrying it. Thank you for trusting me with this, for choosing to build a future here, for—" His voice cracked. "For everything." They told the children the next day. Thomas was excited, already planning what he'd teach the baby. Sarah just smiled, that quiet, content smile, and put her hand on Mercy's stomach like she could feel the life growing there. The pregnancy progressed easy, Mercy's body remembering what to do. She worked the garden until she couldn't bend over anymore, then supervised while Thomas and Sarah did the physical work. Sewed tiny clothes from fabric scraps, prepared a corner of the bedroom for a cradle Riker was building from oak. Summer passed in a blur of work and preparation. They hired another hand to make up for Mercy's reduced capacity, a young man fresh off the boat from Ireland who worked like he was afraid of stopping. "Reminds me of me when I started," Billy said, watching the new kid shovel manure like his life depended on it. All fear and hustle. "You're not like that anymore?" Mercy asked, amused. "Now I'm all experience and confidence." He grinned. "Took almost 3 years, but I figured out I belong here." "You do belong here. All of you do." And it was true. The ranch had become more than just a place. It was a community, a family made of people who'd chosen each other, who'd fought together and survived together and built something that would last. The baby came in October, right on schedule. A long labor that Mercy handled with gritted teeth and curse words that made old Pete blush. Riker stayed with her the whole time, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, looking terrified and awed in equal measure. When the baby finally arrived, a girl with dark hair and lungs that worked just fine, Mercy watched Riker hold his daughter for the first time and saw something in his face shift. Complete. That was the word. He looked complete. "She's perfect," he whispered, cradling the tiny bundle like it might break. "Absolutely perfect." "What should we name her?" Mercy asked. They discussed names, made lists, argued good-naturedly about options. But looking at the baby now, only one name felt right. "Hope," Riker said. "We name her Hope, because that's what she was. What all of this was. Hope that had survived winter and sabotage and every obstacle the frontier could throw at them. Hope that had grown into something real and lasting. Hope that would carry them forward into whatever came next." Sarah loved the baby immediately, hovering around her like a protective shadow. Thomas was more cautious, but Mercy caught him singing to her when he thought no one was watching, his young voice soft and sweet. "You're good with her," Mercy said, making him jump. "She's little. Gotta be careful with little things. You were little once, too." "I don't remember being that small." He looked at Hope sleeping in her cradle. Will she remember all the bad stuff that happened? The storms and the fire and everything? No, she'll only know the good. The ranch as it is now, safe and strong and full of family. Mercy pulled Thomas close. That's what we fought for, so she wouldn't have to. Was it worth it? All the hard parts? Mercy looked around the room, at Riker sleeping in the chair, exhausted from worry and relief. At Sarah curled up on the floor near the cradle, standing guard even in sleep. At the house they'd defended and rebuilt. At the life they'd carved from nothing. Yeah, she said. It was worth every second. The years that followed proved her right. The ranch grew and prospered. They added livestock, expanded the house, built a proper schoolhouse for the children. Other families moved into the valley, drawn by stories of the ranch that had survived everything. A community grew up around them. Thomas became the best rider in the territory by age 12, winning competitions and making a name for himself. Sarah found her voice fully by age 14, quiet still, but no longer silent. She had a way with horses that seemed almost magical, gentle them with just a touch and a word. Hope grew up wild and fearless, climbing trees and chasing cattle and asking questions that had no answers. She had Riker's determination and Mercy's stubbornness, a combination that promised either greatness or disaster. Probably both, Riker said, watching 5-year-old Hope try to rope the barn cat. Greatness and disaster, just like her parents. Mercy laughed. We survived. That's all that matters. We did more than survive. We built something that'll last generations. He pulled her close. And it all started with a desperate widow showing up in my yard demanding shelter. I didn't demand anything. I asked politely. You demanded. Terrified me half to death with how strong you were. Still terrify me sometimes. Good. Keeps you humble. They stood together watching their children, all 3 of them now, play in the yard of the ranch they'd nearly lost a dozen times. The ranch that had tested them and tried to break them and failed. Because some things were stronger than winter, stronger than sabotage, stronger than fear or desperation or any obstacle the world could throw at them. Family was stronger. The kind you were born into and the kind you built from nothing. The kind that fought together and survived together and refused to quit even when quitting seemed like the only option. That was the lesson Mercy had learned in the wilderness. That was what she'd passed down to her children and their children after them. Survival wasn't about being the strongest or the smartest or the luckiest. It was about being stubborn enough to keep going when everything said stop. About finding people worth fighting for and fighting for them with everything you had. About choosing hope even when hope seemed impossible, especially then. I love you, Riker said quietly, in case I forget to mention it today. You mentioned it 3 times already. Then this is 4. And I'll mention it again tomorrow and every day after that until we're too old to remember our own names. That's a long time. Good. I'm planning on a long time with you. He kissed her temple. Forever, if I can manage it. Mercy leaned into him, watched the sun set over mountains that had once seemed threatening and now just seemed beautiful. Watched her children laugh and play in a place that had become truly home. Forever sounds about right, she said, and meant it, because this was what winning looked like. Not perfection, not ease. Just people who loved each other standing together against whatever came next. Just family, built from broken pieces and stubbornness, and a woman who'd refused to quit even when the world said she should. Just home. The ranch that survival built and love made whole.